It looks like our guy is finally starting to get the hang of his earth magic. The end starts putting those bricks he just made to work. Since the inn is linked to his mana, he can use his memory storage magic on the entire building. So they've got to give him the green light. They actually pulled it off, and the experiment to bring back the end of the world was a total success. Our main guy realizes he can't move a muscle and his memory is a total blank. He starts bawling his eyes out and wonders if he was just in a crash, but then a woman suddenly shows up. She looks over and asks him if he's starving. He wonders if she's a nurse, and that's when it clicks. He's definitely in the hospital. This little girl suddenly unleashes her crazy light powers. That sight completely freaks the baby out. Turns out he actually got reborn in a completely different world. This isn't the world he knows at all, so the only explanation is that he's stuck in a place where magic is actually real. The woman says she'll feed the boy herself. The baby realizes his body just won't listen to him. Magic is totally real in this world, and that stunning woman is actually his mom. Getting reborn in a whole new world is seriously the best thing ever. He's officially starting his new life as a baby, but he's still nameless, so everyone just calls him Mary's son or other random stuff. So once he finally hits age 6, they're gonna throw him a huge naming ceremony. Everyone keeps calling him the third son, and it's giving him a seriously bad vibe. The absolute coolest thing about this world so far is definitely the magic. Especially since he can't even find a single lamp or light source in the whole room. It's probably because everyone there just uses magic to light things up. Basically, magic is just a totally normal part of everyone's daily life. This means he's finally gonna be able to use magic too. Fire, wind, water, ice, just thinking about those elements gets him totally hyped. He reaches his hand out, trying to fire off his light magic. But then, literally nothing happens. He keeps tossing and turning in bed until he finally hits his limit and breaks down in tears. His mom, Mary, scoops him up and asks what's going on. He realizes he's got to switch up his whole game plan. First, he's got to watch exactly how his family uses magic so he can learn their secrets. His mom looks over and realizes he's finally awake. She points her finger up, shuts her eyes, and a glow starts building until she finally calls out for the light. It turns out they're actually blasting energy straight out of their own bodies. Mary thinks it's hilarious that our guy just won't stop complaining for even a sec. His voice isn't ready for magic spells yet, so he's got to find his mana source and start training. For the next 3 years, he spent every single day just grinding his mana to the max. He's still totally starving, so he can't use a single bit of magic. They're just broke farmers who are basically starving every single day. He's only 3 years old, but being dirt poor is already wrecking his body. From that point on, he's got to start hunting for his next meal. So there are 2 types of mana. The kind inside his body, and the stuff that's just floating around everywhere. You can actually just suck up all that outside mana right through your mouth. Once he figured that out, he pulled all his mana into his gut and started pumping it through his entire body. Now he can finally sharpen his power, but even with that boost, he's got to hit age 6 for the naming ceremony, because that's the only way he'll finally unlock his magic. Now he's stuck with the most basic magic ever, like lighting up a room or just making some water. His parents literally only know this one type of magic and nothing else. Ever since he was a tiny baby, he's been grinding every single day to finally use magic. Finally, he was actually getting some props for once. The kid takes a massive breath to steady himself. He pulls all that mana into his gut and starts refining it into pure power. He pulls the power into his chest and sends it surging through his whole body. Once he hits the edge of his body, he's got to reach out and pull it back super slowly. He starts pumping the mana through every single part of his body. Mana looks like a gas when it's floating in the air, but inside their bodies, it actually looks way more like a liquid. Mana explodes out of his hands and slams right into the ground. He knows he's got to take it slow and stay locked in, because this is the exact spot where he failed last time. The guy he spent forever building just got blasted into nothing. When you're training your mana, the picture in your head is everything. The ground is super soft and damp, totally packed with all the nutrients needed to grow. Back in his old life, his grandma from the country had a secret trick for fertilizing the soil. By ripping out the weeds and prepping the dirt, the field finally gets all the sun and water it needs. His heart starts pounding like crazy. He reaches down and feels the solid ground beneath him. Suddenly, he starts breaking out in a cold sweat. Out of nowhere, the ground looks totally flawless, and he's hyped that he actually pulled it off as he scoops up a handful of dirt. Each of these plots is only about 10 square meters big. The whole landscape is constantly switching up. These guys are farmers, but their land is rock hard and overflowing with weeds, making it a total disaster. The farming tools here are super basic and can't even compete with the high-tech gear from his old world. But he actually pulled it off using nothing but a basic spell. But get this, it was the first time in his entire life he actually pulled it off. This is officially his first step into a brand new world. But right then, his stomach lets out a massive growl. Turns out using magic makes you absolutely starving. The little guy decides it's time to start planting his own food. He picks a root that's ready to eat in just 20 days. That's the standard meal for poor farmers. Just some nasty vegetables that look gross and taste even worse. But he doesn't care how sketchy those roads are because he's literally starving. This little kid is grinding hard, hauling heavy water and digging through the dirt. He finally finishes growing everything he needs. But man, that's way too much work for a literal 3-year-old. It's been 5 whole days since he finally got his magic to work. He keeps blasting the ground with magic every single day until a huge chunk of the land finally turns into super soft soil. There are even flowers popping up out of nowhere. Those flowers prove the soil is amazing, but they sprouted in just 5 days when it normally takes 20. It's moving way too fast to be normal, and there's absolutely nothing the kid can do to stop it. Then the kid just yanks the plant straight out of the ground. This massive root pops out in one piece, and it's seriously a ton of food. Normally, he would have just ended up with some pretty bad stuff. The kid grabs one of the roots and scrubs it clean in the bucket of water. He shoves the food into his mouth and takes a massive bite. It was a super tough call, but he finally made his choice. It tastes absolutely disgusting, but this is officially the start of his brand new life as a farmer. Once the soil was perfect, he picked out his seeds and the vegetables started growing at insane speeds. 20s usually take 20 days to grow, but these roots were ready in only 5, which is honestly kind of creepy. Sure, this food is total trash compared to his old meals, but it's either eat this or starve. The food from his past life was seriously next level. It looked like art and tasted even better. The farmers and scientists spent ages picking out the perfect stuff, so he's just gonna have to wait it out. Basically, there's something in that world that breaks every rule of logic, and that thing is straight up magic. He had no clue how the science worked, but his garden was growing at warp speed, so he decided to start selling his crops. He's really hoping that one day, he'll finally start to enjoy the taste of that food. He's got zero clue how to actually pull it off, but once he actually took a second to think about it, he suddenly remembered that one story about green peas he heard back in class. They watched those green peas grow with their own eyes, and after a few harvests, they finally cracked the code on how traits get passed down. While trying to figure out his next move, the kid just passes out. First up, we gotta see what these twainers are actually capable of. It's not just the roots that are different. Even the leaves and flowers look totally unique. They come in black and purple, with some showing low numbers while others have totally massive ones. One's got white flowers, but the other one is bright yellow. Once he finished sorting through all their unique traits, he actually managed to split them all up into 6 different planting zones. Ever since he started doing this, it's become his favorite hobby and he does it every single day. Suddenly, he realizes that even the vegetables are straight up magic. His custom magic actually fuses his inner energy with the world outside, and every time he uses it, that mixed up mana gets totally burned away. He can try to fuse his magic again, but his mana is totally bone dry, so he's officially out of power. This kid has absolutely no clue how to get his mana back when that happens. He's stuffing his face, but his body is still taking forever to heal up. He figured it all out once he could finally eat normal food again. He realized that just eating regular food and veggies was the secret to healing up way faster. His mana takes a while to fully recharge after a meal, so he hasn't noticed the truth yet, which leaves us with one huge question. He's trying to figure out which snack gives him the biggest mana boost. You can totally see the massive difference in how much they heal in all sorts of ways. It tastes exactly the same as before, but he's gonna worry about that later. This kid is having the time of his life finding so much cool stuff in just a few days. He's gotta find the best food to max out his mana, but his body can only handle so much before it hits a wall. He's dying to find a way to make this go way faster. He's just gonna expand the dirt for now, so he drops down and slams his hands onto the ground. He can't even start to focus without shutting his eyes tight. But by now, he's totally used to it. The energy finally fades out and settles right on top of his farm. He's staring at this weird, shimmering gas, but he can't really tell what he's looking at. He pumps all that supercharged mana straight into his arms and legs. But then, things start getting really weird. The whole plantation starts going wild, and the kid is totally blown away as blue gas begins leaking out of the ground. He grabs a root and realizes that, yep, this plant is definitely the one making all that blue gas. It's spilling right out of the roots and just floating away into the air. The kid is totally blown away and starts pulling up other routes to see how they stack up. He realizes the dark blue one gives him the most mana back, which basically means that blue glow is definitely the mana itself. He kept on eating and watching everything while focusing all his mana right into his eyes. He realized that bigger roots meant way more mana, and even though they tasted like trash, he kept grinding on his genetic experiments every single day. By the time he turned 5, he was already uncovering a ton of new secrets. He just found a special type that recharges a massive amount of mana. But even after that, it doesn't actually do anything yet. Between that news and the crazy blue glow, He was riding a total high for a while. The kid starts thinking, what would happen if he pushed all that mana into a totally different part of his body? It's way more than just his eyes, and he definitely needs to test it out. But right now, he just needs to crash. Up until this point, he was just pumping mana through his body and letting it leak into the dirt instead of actually casting a spell. So instead of letting the guy release all that pressure, he forces him to keep it trapped inside. By focusing a ton of mana, he unlocked a legendary body boost that made watering his plants and expanding his farm a total breeze. He figures if his muscles can get stronger, then his organs should be able to level up too. If he levels up his digestion, he can scarf down those veggies and soak up the mana way faster. He spent a ton of time figuring out the perfect way to use his magic to handle the situation. But then one day everything changed. Then, out of nowhere, they just announced they're hitting the road. Mary begs him to stay safe, looking totally heartbroken, and tells the boy he better make it back home in one piece. The guy just flashes her a big grin and he tells our main guy that he's leaving everything in his hands now. His dad was the glue holding the whole family together, but he had to leave. The kid couldn't wrap his head around why a farmer would ever need to leave home. It's all because he just got called up to fight in a massive war. A massive war broke out, and every single guy in the village had to leave home to go fight. He always felt like the technology in this world was seriously lacking. And it turns out the big problem is straight-up war. Back when things were actually chill, the villagers all worked the fields together, and the deal was simple. The harder you worked, the more land you got to keep. If the fighting finally stopped, they'd have massive farms and incredible tech, but the boy just stares at the ground, feeling totally hopeless. Mary tells the kid to chill out since this isn't the first time his dad has headed off to war. He's got to step up and build these fields since it's a huge job, and the price goes up based on how much land he's actually using. The kid is seriously worried about their gear because half these guys are heading to war with nothing but farm tools that are totally useless in a real fight. Basically, these guys are treated like disposable soldiers and get wrecked, which turns their whole world into a total mess and leaves them with no place to live. The kid doesn't want any blood on his hands, but he's still gonna need that massive power from the war. Everyone's gonna be hunting for weapons and armor, but the real key to everything is having a ton of cash. This lady shows up looking to trade some roots for potatoes. He realizes the big problem with this world is that they're still just trading items for everything. Money is totally useless in this village, so there's really only one thing left to do. Now he's gotta count on a merchant to help him out. Mary tells the boy he should totally try making some sandals. He can turn those roots he's growing into all kinds of gear, like sandals, boots, and basically any shoe you can think of. Now the kid can buy whatever he wants, but the MC thinks this whole plan is a total waste of time. Merchants wander from town to town selling their gear, but the best part is you can always haggle for a better deal. This has to be a totally foolproof way to stack some serious cash. A guy in the city spots the sandals and thinks they're awesome, so the MC tells him his mom was the one who taught him how to make them. The guy smiles and buys the sandals, and the little kid is totally hyped because he's finally about to get paid. But things got real way too fast. All he got was 6 crusty old copper coins. Turns out those sandals were way cheaper than he ever expected. At this speed, he'll literally be an old man before he finally gets those weapons. He calls over a merchant and asks if he can ask him a quick question. A few days flew by after he finally got the lowdown on market prices from that merchant. He's actually about to pull a move like that, even though he's totally wiped out from all that grinding. With all the info he just uncovered, he's about to make some serious bank. He's kicking off a wild experiment to grow his own magic mushrooms. Our guy's jaw hit the floor when he realized he could actually refill his mana. The merchant showed him a magic mushroom that's super rare and almost impossible to find. The merchant swears this item is insanely rare and almost impossible to find. Our guy takes one look and is totally stunned into silence. So, do you guys seriously think this is just some regular old shiitake mushroom? But this merchant guy is totally flexing that he's actually got it. It didn't taste as wild as he expected, but he can use a cultivation kit to grow those shiitakes himself. Mushrooms basically eat trees to grow, and if these magic ones work like shiitake, the possibilities are totally insane. The trunks were already bone dry, which saved them a ton of time. He gets the perfect mix of dry and wet, plants the fungi, and then waits for them to finally sprout. If it was really that easy, someone else would have definitely done it by now. If they're called magic mushrooms, you just know they've gotta be packed with mana. If he's sucking the nutrients right out of the tree trunk, then that's gotta be where all their mana is coming from too. If that's the deal, he can just feed those wooden logs to his monitor, and he's totally hyped to give it a shot. First up, he's gotta pump different amounts of mana into every single log of wood. He spends all day working the fields, handles the logs in the afternoon, and then stays up late making sandals with his mom. After waiting around for a bit, the mushrooms finally start popping up. There are only 3 of them, but it looks like his cultivation actually paid off. To pull this off, he's got to start leveling up on a massive scale. His house is totally out of room for that wood pile because his sandal and tunic farms are taking up every inch of space. Forget just having extra storage, he needs a whole building for his stuff, and while his magic makes the ground super fertile, it lets him create crests too. So basically, he can reshape the ground and build something totally new. Trying to build something like that with magic is a total nightmare. But he's not just jumping in head first, he's actually got a secret plan ready to go. They can use all that dirt to build stuff, because making something out of thin air is a magic rule that's way too hard to pull off. Earth magic is the kind of stuff you only ever see in video games. He gathers all that magic in his palm and turns it into rocks he can chuck at his enemies. That stone hits way harder the faster it moves, and he can pull it off just by picturing the whole thing in his head. Sure, it works if they can pull it off, but it's honestly a total waste of time. It's way easier to power up when you're just using stuff that's already there. The kid gets all quiet and starts thinking deep. For some reason, the only way he can actually use his magic right is by using the soil. This wouldn't even be a big deal if he could just turn the dirt into metal. He figured it'd be a sick challenge to build a whole warehouse using nothing but the dirt. The kid's mana starts surging and he's totally locked in. He keeps his hands pressed to the ground and suddenly, a massive spell goes off. Everything goes blurry as he hits the ground and passes out cold. The kid finally wakes up a bit later to find his mom looking super worried. And man, his head is totally killing him. He was totally stuck in bed for 2 whole days. The kid totally blacked out because he used up every single drop of mana in his body, leaving him completely drained. Normally, all the mana in his body keeps flowing around just to make casting spells super easy. He's basically using his mana to buff his body and get way stronger. He's super relieved he didn't run out of energy completely, because that would have literally killed him. He totally failed the mission, but he definitely learned a massive lesson from it. The ground just exploded into a massive crater right where the kid let his power loose. His mana shouldn't be running out this fast, so something must be behind this massive drain. Maybe it's all about the link between area and volume, where a square that's 10 meters wide gives you an area of 100. This massive cube is 10 meters on every side, giving it a total volume of 1,000. He totally wasted 10 times more mana than he needed, so he's gonna have to stop lifting that building for a minute. He decides to make his own building supplies, and he actually turns some plain old dirt into a solid brick. His building magic is finally as epic as he dreamed, and he totally nailed making those bricks. A little while later, the kid finally manages to build a square with them, and even though it's super shaky, it's still his very first try. Technically, it's just earth magic, but the ways you can use it just keep getting crazier. Suddenly, something totally catches the boy's eyes. He sees it as a total nightmare that's tearing the whole world apart. The land his family spent generations farming is about to become totally useless for growing anything. Deep down, he's always been super proud of how unique his village looks. He uses his magic to heal the ground, turning rocks into fertilizer to make the soil super rich. He's got magic for farming, magic to get super strong, and now he's even making bricks with it. But even with all that, he thinks using magic for farming is just super lame. He's the only one who can use this power, and since he doesn't need any magic words to make it work, he hasn't even bothered giving it a name. But even then, he makes that soil way better every single time. He shouts out the spell's name just because it makes him feel way better. It's all because he's taking way too long to finally figure out how to cast his spells. He drops the magic words and the ground totally transforms, leaving even him blown away by how it looks. The second he opened his mouth, his magic instantly flared up. He's a total pro now, but back then, he had to picture exactly what he wanted just to make it real. It turns out he finally unlocked his own magic, and now he can literally create his own spells. This is actually working way better than he first expected. Silent magic is actually pretty cool, but it gets old way too fast. He's totally hyped that he can cast magic just by talking, so he uses his powers to upgrade the soil again. Now he's got a 10-meter zone under his control. When magic comes from your voice, the effects literally never turn off. He just flips a switch in his head to control how much soil he's working on, but a bigger area definitely eats up more of his mana. Our guy still has no clue how any of that is even possible. He starts messing around with his magic, like testing out the spell to spawn bricks. He spends all day talking just to spawn bricks, and he doesn't even stop when he's heading to bed. Fast forward a few months, and the kid is still grinding away at it. He finally nails the spell to create bricks, making sure every single one weighs exactly the same. But there's a huge catch to making that actually happen. The trigger for this whole thing is literally just casting the spell. And that's exactly how he unlocked his insane new way to cast spells. Lately, everyone in the village has been acting super weird. He totally went overboard with the brick experiment, and his mom realizes having that many bricks is going to be a massive problem. She says they'd at least be useful as plates, and that's when a total light bulb moment hits our main guy. If they can actually turn this dirt into bricks, Since he can make kitchen gear with those same materials, the kid just whips up a rice pot on the spot. Our guy gets super hyped and starts crafting a ton of cool stuff for the house to surprise his mom with gifts. Until she tells him they've got plenty, so he can finally stop making all that stuff. But honestly, all he really wants is to make his mom smile, since everything he made before this was just super boring and brown. The next big move is to stop spamming and start making every single hit count. Mary is totally stoked when she finally gets her hands on a brand new white porcelain cup. Turns out you don't actually need the perfect ingredients to make magic work. The little guy decides to make something that looks way more expensive just to make his mom even happier. The new item is a cup with these messy flowers that look like a kid drew them, but his mom totally loved it. He's got zero artistic talent, but he still managed to pull off making that cup. The kid has no clue how to craft porcelain, but he remembers a secret from his past life about using sea sand to make it happen. He starts picturing a long, see-through tube in his head. A brand new item gets created, and it's actually a glass cup. He's making something so wild that nobody in the village or even the outside world has ever seen it before. Now the kid is just out here selling sandals and magic mushrooms. He walks away with 14 bronze coins, and he's still totally fuming because even though it's more money, it's still just cheap bronze. Out of nowhere, the merchant speaks up and says he needs to talk to the little guy. He realizes this is the perfect chance to sell his gear, so he asks the merchant what he's looking for. This guy says he actually wants to buy some of the bricks the kid made. The merchant asks if he's built anything cool lately, but the kid is totally confused and says it was just a warehouse. But even then, the guy is totally stunned that it's actually built out of bricks. He tells the kid to go ask his parents about selling those bricks. But first, our MC confirms he's 100% ready to make the deal. He's super hyped to show off the utensils he made, but the guy just looks totally lost. The merchant turns around and says he only cares about the bricks right now, so the pots and plates will just have to wait. The kid grabs him like a total maniac and promises he's not going to regret this. With all that pressure on him, he finally gives in and agrees to check it out. He's totally blown away by everything the kid built and asks him how he even pulled it off. The merchant takes the deal and buys that plus all the bricks. The kid is hyped, thinking he's about to score way more than just a few measly bronze coins. But nothing really changed, and he only walked away with 5 bronze coins. Our hero snatches the guy back up and tells him he probably thinks he's just some clueless kid who doesn't understand the real price of things. The merchant claims he's paying way more than usual, but the kid is just confused why it's still so cheap. These things look incredible and could sell for a ton of cash, but the merchant says he usually just sells to regular people. Even if the stuff is super cool, nobody's actually got the cash to buy it. Rich people only stick with sellers they've known for ages, so this guy doesn't stand a ghost of a chance. If you want to make bank, you've got to sell the priciest gear to the people who actually have the cash to buy it. But in this world, there's no internet or newspapers to help you get the word out about your stuff. He's got zero connections to get any hype going anyway, so talking to that merchant was just a massive waste of time. The guy tells him to cheer up because the brick business is actually booming right now. He's gonna buy every single brick the kid can make by the next time they meet. For the next few days, our guy goes on a total grind, stacking up massive piles of bricks. The merchant comes back and is totally blown away because the kid actually kept his word and made way more bricks than before. He wouldn't believe a word from any other kid, but since they've known each other for a while, he actually trusts him. This time the merchant brought a beast strong enough to haul that massive pile of bricks, and the kid is totally blown away. That thing looks exactly like a dragon, and now it's staring him right in the face. The merchant asks if he's ever seen a horse dragon, and while our guy is super hyped, the merchant quickly explains it's definitely not a real dragon. That thing is straight up a monster born from the daily grind. Service beasts are loyal to their masters from the moment they're in the egg, and they grow by soaking up all their owner's mana. Also, the creature ends up looking exactly like the mana you use to grow it, so it all depends on how you hatch that egg. Once you hatch that egg, that creature is going to be 100% loyal to you. Our guy finally finishes stacking every last brick onto the man's massive cart. This world is packed with insanely strong dragons, but the horse dragon is the one everyone's obsessed with. Horses are total tanks, but bird types are way more popular since they can literally fly. Our guy asks if these work beasts are expensive, and the man tells him the horse models you can ride cost way more. Bricks are selling like crazy right now, but that hype won't last forever, and this kid can't even figure out how to take care of a basic egg. If he gets lucky, he's gonna make a ton of money, so he hits up the merchant right away. Now our guy wants to get in on the action and try hatching a beast egg too. The kid tells the merchant to bring him an egg the next time he shows up. And the price tag for that gear? It literally cost him every single penny he'd ever saved up. It all started on a totally normal day. Out of nowhere, a bunch of guys showed back up. The kids were absolutely stoked to finally be back with their parents. Sheila heads back and scoops her 4th daughter right up into her arms. Mary is totally hyped to finally be back with her husband. The mom asks her son if the merchant brought him anything cool. Then she straight up asks him for some cash. But our guy tells them he's actually flat broke. She's totally lost and has no idea what he's even trying to say. At just 3 years old, this kid decided he was ready to start cultivating sprites. Right then, his mom realized this job was way too much for a kid to handle. But he wasn't letting anything stop him now. His mom told him to just focus on making sure his cultivation was leveling up the right way. They went to check it out and found that the little kid had already made a whole bunch of gardens. Right then, Mary realized her son was a total legend. A few years fly by, and now the 5-year-old kid is on a mission to save up some serious cash. She thought it was way too early for that, but he told her he just wanted to stack some cash for the future. Even though he's just a kid, he's been handling that merchant all by himself, and that's not even counting the magic mushrooms he's been growing. She was honestly worried about how hard he pushed himself, especially since he built a whole warehouse using bricks he made all on his own. He even handed over this super fancy porcelain cup. But she honestly had no clue how he pulled all that off. Mary was totally shocked and asked him why he even did that. She's totally losing it because he just blew his entire paycheck on a monster egg. He's bragging about how rich they'll be once the egg hatches, but she shuts him down, saying everyone would be loaded if it were really that simple. She says these eggs are basically a total gamble, and most of them are just duds that won't even hatch. His mom says she only let him work because the whole plan was to save up some cash. He snaps back that it's his hard-earned money, so he'll spend it on whatever he wants. Mary calls him out on that, though, because he even sold the sandals they made together. From that moment on, he's banned from buying anything without her okay. And even though he tries to say sorry, she's making him sit there and really think about what he did. His mom looks young and pretty, but she turns into a total nightmare when she's mad, and now he's got 0 options left. Since he's the one making and selling all the bricks, he decides to rig the system a bit to pocket some extra cash and keep his secrets safe. Right now, that egg is the only thing that matters. He used the sprites to craft a little pouch for the egg, and now he can carry it around totally safe. A whole squad can team up to hatch one egg, but since everyone's mana is different, it's basically impossible to get the same kind of monster twice. He pumps mana into his eyes and sees the egg glowing with a crazy blue light. The kid notices its mana is super low, but it's still totally covered in that weird glow. Next, the kid takes a deep breath and pumps his mana straight into the egg. That blue light starts glowing like crazy, and the kid is hyped because he finally soaked up all that mana. He's honestly just guessing how much mana he needs to pull this off, but he's still dead set on getting that egg so he can use its power to the max. Every day he just stared at that egg, stuck in the same boring routine. The little guy figures it's time to build himself a secret hideout. Just like his mom says, he's still a kid and shouldn't be spending money on himself. That place is totally stuck in the past, where the family head makes every single rule just because he's the guy in charge. Our hero finally saved up enough cash to buy a legit weapon, knowing it's the only way he'll become a legend when the war starts. These younger kids are stuck serving the elders for life unless they finally ditch the family. Now he's putting the weapons aside to start prepping for the day he finally goes solo. Like they say, you gotta strike fast while the timing is perfect. His home village is completely surrounded. And right outside, there's a super thick forest. Back when the world was actually safe, they chopped down the forest and used the land to build their village. The city is doing its best to survive all the constant wars, but it's slowly shrinking away. Out past the village, the land is totally free for anyone who's willing to work it. Now the little guy just needs to find the perfect spot to start building his house. He's using magic to supercharge his body and get way stronger. Now he can work as much as he wants and never feel tired, no matter how hard he pushes himself. The kid uses his powers to control the ground too. He shoves the trees back up just so he can smash them down again. Then he just starts chucking every single tree to the ground. Now he's got to clear out all those trees before he can start building. He used his power to level the ground and just wiped those trees right out. He kept spamming his magic over and over until the plane was finally finished. He cleared a massive spot in the woods, but now he's stuck building everything brick by brick, wishing he had some OP magic to just spawn the whole house instantly. Suddenly, a light bulb goes off and he realizes he doesn't actually need to build a house. He figured out he's burning through all his mana by trying to build everything at once, but the fix is actually super simple. He's just got to build every single wall one by one. He uses every single brick to build a massive wall that's not going anywhere. To pull this off, the kid just pictures a single wall in his head. Next, the little kid actually pulls it off and builds a perfect square out of bricks. But they're still gonna have to build the roof and the door by hand. He's gonna have his forest house totally finished in no time at all. All this time, he just kept his eyes glued to that egg. It's getting huge and that blue glow is way brighter now, which means it's definitely gonna hatch any second. His mom rushes past the door, shouting for him to hurry up already. Finally, our main guy has officially hit the big age of 6. Once you hit age 6, you get your official baptism right in the village. And that's officially how the kids' wild day wrapped up. There are barely 10 people inside the church, but that's just how it is in a tiny village like this. Our main guy doesn't remember his old baptism at all, so it probably sucked. But here, the naming ceremony is actually a big part of the whole ritual. And just like that, the kid can finally use magic for everything in his daily life. For as long as anyone can remember, humans have been terrified of monsters and forced to live their lives in hiding. Even so, tons of people started using magic, and way more human territories actually managed to pull through. Since regular people can't survive on their own, they get this insane godlike power to help them win. Now it's finally time for the naming ceremony to kick off. Every single day, the people get their magic power through a special baptism ceremony. The church racks up a bunch of followers while the Lord gets a list of every single person who joined. It's a system where everyone wins, and the priest says that with this name, the kid gets divine protection and the power to use magic. But get this, magic is strictly for making people's lives better. The priest makes the kid promise not to go crazy with his magic, and the little guy totally agrees. He flips open this massive book, and our hero sees it's decked out in some seriously insane designs. The priest finishes reading and snaps the book shut on the table. Then he calls the kid the son of Ashira and Mary. The guy shouts that he's getting baptized right here in this church. From that moment on, he's officially one of us, and has to stay loyal to his leader and his crew by always doing the right thing. The Lord is keeping a close eye on him and making sure he stays safe with his holy power. R taps into his power to give his vision a massive boost. That's when he spots all the magic charging up right in the guy's hand. Out of nowhere, he slams a magic circle right at him. Our guy is totally caught off guard. He's been wondering this whole time what would go down if all that magic just gathered in his brain. And get this, they actually get to keep all their memories. Forget the magic circle for a second, because a ton of new info is being blasted straight into his brain. Now he's finally able to use magic for his everyday life. The kid gives it a shot and suddenly the whole place lights up. R notices that kids and adults use the exact same magic, proving the whole system is totally stuck and hasn't improved at all. He's been grinding for years, but that power is still stuck exactly where it started. And just like that, the kid's whole plan to escape is totally ruined. Ars was really hoping for more than just earth magic after getting his powers, but he's gotta forget about that for a second and focus. But then something else totally caught his eye, that weird magic circle. Ars is dying to find out what's really going on with this. A few days go by and the kid still hasn't figured out a single thing. He can't read a single word, and since he already struggles with basic modern writing, there's no way he's figuring out these ancient symbols. All he really wanted was to finally be able to write his own name. Out of nowhere, the egg starts to crack wide open. The kid is totally hyped, wondering what kind of crazy beast is about to pop out. The egg keeps making all these sounds, and it's like whatever's inside is dying to get out. But man, this is taking forever, so R starts wondering if he should just step in and help. Right then, the egg cracks wide open and a creature crawls out. It looks like a total mashup of a horse and a handle. That cute little horse is staring straight at ours. The little guy tries to wobble onto its feet, and the boy is totally shocked it can already move like that, even though its legs were shaking like crazy. R gets super hyped, clapping for his new little pet before giving it some head pats. Deep down, the kid is actually super glad he ended up with that little guy. R realizes this thing is actually a crazy mix of a horse and a reindeer. Once it finally grows up, it's gonna be massive and strong enough to carry anything they need. Out of nowhere, the little guy starts munching on its own shell, and the boy has no idea what's going on. R has no clue what this little monster even eats, because while normal work beasts usually live off magic, this guy is acting totally different. Buying meat every single day is way too expensive for him, and he's even heard horror stories about people losing their pets because they couldn't afford to feed them. He's got zero milk to give the thing, so the little monster just starts munching on something else instead. This little guy is snacking on radishes that grow all over the place, and he's clearly loving every bite. It only eats plants for now, so he can actually afford to keep this little monster fed. The tiny horse just stares him down, rubs against his leg, and then hops right onto his lap. It just plops down right there and goes straight to sleep. R has zero clue what's happening, but it's honestly just way too adorable. This horse is already freaking massive! He wouldn't even give the horse a name before because he didn't want to get attached, but now he's finally ready to make it official. He wants a name that's actually special, since he's figured out that everyday magic is basically just code written inside those magic circles. He's going all out to give them the best names possible using a massive magic circle. Since that monster's got magic, this is definitely gonna work, and it'll be able to hunt for water all on its own. If it runs out of clean water or drinks something nasty, it's basically game over. R wonders what to name it, but he's low-key stressed because he knows his naming skills are straight up trash. He's pretty sure a monster with 2 horns is called a bicorn, but he just can't connect the name to this thing anymore. Suddenly, the name Valkyrie finally clicks in his head. They actually belong to a legendary god of war from the old stories. The kid turns to his friend and asks what they think of the name. Valkyrie is all smiles and having a total blast hanging out. Turns out she can actually understand every word we say. She's super smart, but now he's finally kicking off the naming ceremony. Our guy finally figured out how to sharpen his magic naturally just by breathing. This time, he's being extra careful and making sure every single move is perfect. And he pumps his whole body full of super thick magic. R thrusts his hand out to use his power, but he's seriously struggling to keep all that magic under control. He locks onto Valkyrie, focusing everything on recreating that magic circle he memorized perfectly. The kid feels like his veins are literally about to pop, and he's totally drenched in sweat from pushing himself way too hard. Suddenly, a glowing magic circle pops up right in front of his face. He was right at his breaking point, but he still managed to pull it off. Then R speaks up and decides her name is going to be Valkyrie. The whole circle breaks apart and everyone just scatters. Totally wiped out, he collapses to the ground because that was way tougher than he ever expected. If he messed up, he was a goner, so he hits up Valkyrie to see if magic can save the day. They head outside the tiny house so she can blast her magic without accidentally burning the whole place down. Suddenly, Valkyrie whips up a massive glowing ball of energy. The kid is totally hyped that she can actually use magic. After trying out a few spells, the kid realizes Valkyrie is just using super basic magic like starting fires or making water. Out of nowhere, a brick starts floating in midair, and Ars is totally lost. Valkyrie looks totally chill, like she's the one bossing those bricks around. The kid is totally lost and has no clue what's even going on. Valkyrie is pulling off a secret spell that only R knows, which means that magic circle must have saved her memories. This means all the other named kids can use that magic too, and our guy is absolutely fuming that anyone else has his secret power. He calls out for Valkyrie and shows her exactly what he's capable of. R holds out a tiny pot and asks her if she can make another one just like it. He was right. Valkyrie can only use the exact same spells as him after she finally gets a name. Our guy can change exactly how much land he crushes whenever he wants, but Valkyrie is stuck only flattening squares of a specific size. This naming ritual follows way stricter rules than a regular protection, which is why they can't change or tweak their basic magic at all. Ars starts wondering if it's actually safe to sell her to someone who knows how to handle her magic. Now he's got to track someone down to make sure he's actually right. The merchant is totally losing it because he's never seen a work beast use magic before. Our hero quickly realized that in this world, knowing the right secrets is the most valuable thing you can have. If a merchant who travels the whole world hasn't heard of them, he's probably right. Magic-using beasts are actually super rare. The merchant asks if the egg finally hatched, and the boy tells him it's officially out. It morphs into a horse that's perfect for hauling all their gear. The merchant gets super hyped and asks to get a closer look at the animal. Ars promises to bring Valkyrie right to him, while she's busy learning how to keep her magic a total secret from everyone. The seller is totally blown away and tells her she's seriously on another level. Sure, having her help carry stuff is awesome, but she's also a total beauty with some seriously cool colors. Ars tells him straight up that she's not for sale, and the merchant asks him what his deal is. He blew every last cent on that egg just to get rich, but honestly, it looks like he's actually starting to love the little guy. Let's be real, the only reason he's keeping her close is because he's obsessed with her crazy magic. But for real, he just wants to stay right there by her side. She's way more powerful than he is, so having her around is the only way he's staying safe. The merchant looks at the kid and asks if he's down to make a deal. He's got 5 monster eggs and he's ready to hand them all over to our squad. But it's not that easy, because don't forget, this guy is a merchant through and through. He says he's letting us keep the eggs until they're finally ready to hatch. He'll be back later to buy up every single monster that gets born. If we're the ones hatching these monsters, finding someone to buy them is going to be a total breeze. R is totally down and says he's in. But he's the one who gets to make the rules. The contract breaks down the price of the beasts and all the selling rules, so Ars finally feels totally safe making the deal. If he can snag enough monster eggs, his money troubles are history, and he's ready to go all out on the farm. Ars realizes he's got to pump his magic straight into those eggs. Valkyrie starts sniffing them, and even though Ars tells her they aren't food, she instantly pops one right into her mouth. The kid completely freaks out when he thinks one of the eggs just cracked. Then Valkyrie flops down right next to the eggs, and our guy sees they're actually totally fine because she's trying to hatch them herself. This monster wants to look after them just like they're her own kids. She presses her snout against the eggs to pour her energy inside, leaving Ars totally stunned that Valkyrie can actually inject mana. She was basically born knowing those eggs need to soak up mana to finally hatch. He figures out she can't hatch the eggs because the babies need the energy of whoever wakes them up, so he decides keeping them is just a waste of time. Suddenly, he realizes she actually stuffed her magic inside 3 of those eggs. You can totally team up to look after the egg, but it makes duplicating all that massive magic power way harder. Ars actually agrees to leave 3 of the eggs behind for Valkyrie. He tells her to be super careful so they hatch right, looking totally proud of himself. Back in his old life, he found a dog just sitting right in the middle of the street. Right then, his mom was seriously doubting if he could actually handle looking after that tiny little creature. He straight up told them there was no way he could handle that kind of pressure. He actually got to keep the dog after promising he'd take total responsibility for it. He thought he was doing a great job just feeding and walking the little guy. But he totally forgot about the massive bills for food, shots, and all those expensive vet visits. Thinking back to what his parents said that day, he finally realizes they were 100% right. Now that he's stuck looking after a bunch of rookie Valkyries, things are getting seriously messy. All 5 eggs hatched perfectly, and even though his are a bit bigger, they all look just like Valkyrie. He's already crushed the first stage anyway. But obviously, the more of them there are, the faster the food is gonna run out. If he's gonna keep this business running, that tiny hideout farm won't cut it, so he's gotta start planting way more gardens all over the forest. Arstil is totally hyped and tells all those animals to follow his lead. He pulls the exact same move he used earlier. He's hacking down trees and flattening the ground to clear the whole area. Once they finish prepping and boosting the soil, it's officially time to start planting. Ar tries to keep those little monsters in check, but they're going absolutely wild. Zicker gave them their names, and get this, they can actually use magic. It turns out names don't just give you magic. Or maybe these monsters are just playing by a totally different set of rules than humans. Basically, every single monster born into that family is going to have crazy magic powers. Ars is wondering if Valkyrie can just tell everyone to stop using magic. But right then, the smartest move is to just focus on making the farm way bigger. Now that's way better. This size is actually perfect. It's honestly massive, and it's basically wiping everything out like a forest getting leveled. This thing is so massive that it's honestly hard to even wrap your head around its size. Since he remembers how much cutting down trees ruined his old world, he's actually pretty worried about trashing the environment here. The villagers weren't kidding about how massive this forest is, and he needs to find some huge prey to feed all his hungry creatures. But the bigger it gets, the harder it's gonna be to keep everything under control. They're totally running out of steam, so they decide to finally team up and work together. Ar asks Valkyrie if she's actually ready to head out for her very first ride. She's not even a horse, but a regular saddle should work just fine. Or so he thought. But his dad says there isn't a single person in that village who can actually build a saddle for a monster. He's wondering if a cart is enough since that's the usual way to move these monsters. But honestly, he just really wants to go full speed on Valkyria. He's planning to hit the front lines one day, and he knows that cavalry is way stronger than regular soldiers. This is actually a genius move because getting on top of Valkyria gives him a massive upper hand. But that's a huge problem since he doesn't even have a saddle to ride on. The only way out is to charge full speed right this way. Controlling someone by syncing your moves takes some serious skill, but riding Valkyrie was actually way easier than he thought it'd be. Valkyrie is a total genius, and he's just strolling along at his own chill pace. Because of that, he could just hop on her back and ride without needing a saddle at all. But things go south fast when our guy's muscles start screaming in pain from riding all day, something he definitely wasn't ready for. Valkyrie is trying his best to stay steady, but he keeps wobbling and has to force his legs to work just to keep from falling over. He's tensing every single muscle at once, which is actually way more exhausting than just wearing a suit of armor. But honestly, our guy has no other choice because he's definitely not backing down. He spent every single day riding like crazy to get ready, and the kid says their friend gets super hyped after a nap and just won't stop talking. Our hero wonders where he got that power, and if he's actually for real, especially since he just finished mastering a new spell after some crazy intense training. Whenever he looks at someone using magic, he can see a bright blue glow shining right in their eyes. Maybe his magic is just leaking out like steam and getting totally wasted, so he wonders what would happen if he kept it all trapped inside. His natural healing powers just got a massive level up. He saw the results, but he hasn't used his cultivation spell yet because the boost is already running 24/7. Leveling lets you flatten the whole ground instantly, and with brick creation, you can spawn a bunch of identical bricks all at once. This body fortification spell makes you super tough from head to toe, and it stays that way forever. Even if he crashes after using his power-up, the spell stays active and keeps doing its thing. Basically, the whole plan for growing these spells is just to make that energy boost last way longer. This magic lets him wake up totally refreshed even if his muscles are sore, and he's absolutely hyped about it. He's just laying there on the bed, grinning like a total idiot. Now that he's all healed up, he's diving straight into that high-speed training without holding anything back. The merchant shows up with a bonus egg, but the kid already finished hatching every single one he got before. He thought he'd only see 1 or 2 hatch, but this deal with the beast is moving way faster than he expected. Even if you've got a bunch of eggs, they won't hatch all at once, and it usually takes way more than a month just to get a single one. The merchant knows he could make a killing selling these creatures, but he's actually worried people might use them for some really shady stuff. He actually doesn't want to sell the creatures at first, so Ars wonders if the guy is just planning to use them for his own business instead. The guy just smirks and says he feels the same, but this time things are totally different. Now this little guy is forced to hand over one of his animals for absolutely nothing. R is totally losing it, and the guy starts scrambling to explain himself. The merchant says he'll hook him up with the powerful nobles who run the whole area. He mentioned before that traveling merchants have a hard time making connections, and you need some serious trust to get people to buy your stuff, especially since the rich nobles have a total monopoly and keep all the new. R catches on that the merchant's story about losing all his gear was a total lie. The merchant switches gears and says only rich people buy the pricey stuff, but since he's got zero credit, he's stuck in a really tough spot. But if you give that monster to a rich person, everything is going to be totally different. Better stick to these creatures to be safe, or use rideable if I'm confident. Let's go with rideable as it's the most. Handing over one of these beasts is the perfect way to get on the good side of those powerful nobles. Getting into that inner circle makes meeting other fancy nobles way easier, giving his messenger business a massive level up since you can't just ignore the powerful lords who run the place. R is totally confused and asks him what he's even talking about. If they sell that war beast to the enemy, every single person's life is on the line. The merchant says they're heading straight to the noble's mansion, and the boy asks if he really has to tag along. The guy says he's finally gonna go have a talk with his old man. And just like that, he finally made it out of the city for the first time ever. Ars was totally blown away by everything he saw. That right there is the city where all those burgers actually live. All those creatures teamed up and hauled that cart for 3 whole days. They finally make it to Fontana, the massive city where all the rich nobles live. That's the walled city right there, and it's finally time for our very first adventure. The kid sees the whole place is buzzing with energy, and the merchant tells him to go check it out. Everyone's building stuff like crazy, so now they're totally desperate for more bricks. They're smashing the wall to grow the city, but even after recycling the old pieces, they're still totally short on bricks. R asks if people still want bricks, and the merchant says totally, but since the city is starting to make their own, R's time to make a profit is running out fast. So the kid really needs to play it smart and strike some serious deals with those fancy nobles. This sharp-looking guy introduces himself as Raymond, and says he's the negotiator for House Fontana. R the merchant is straight up kneeling down in front of the guy. Our MC is totally fuming because he really thought he'd get to meet the nobles and see inside their fancy mansions. The nobles didn't have any reason to meet them in person anyway, so Raymond just asks if he can actually ride that creature like a horse. The merchant agrees and brags that these beasts are top tier, so you can even ride them while wearing heavy armor. They're super hyped to hand that work creature over to Mr. Fontana. Raymond's like, wait, who is that kid? The merchant introduces our guy as the one who brought those things to life, and says the dude standing right next to him is his father. Raymond says making this monster is gonna take forever, and the merchant totally agrees, calling this new species a Valkyrie. He's dying to get permission to breed and sell these creatures, while Ars realizes that Valkyrie is just the name of the first one, not the whole species. The real Valkyrie is busy looking after the village, and there's zero chance he's ever gonna sell her. Raymond tells them he'll sign their permission slips later. He's gonna fill Mr. Fontana in and tells everyone to keep up the hard work. But even though the merchant agrees, our guy wonders if the deal is really over yet. Raymond clears his throat and says those monsters are totally useless for a real war anyway. The merchant asks why, but Raymond points out that those horns are super annoying and make it impossible to actually use a sword. Right then he calls over one of the workers. Then he tells them to slice that horn right off. Ars is totally stunned by that decision and tries to jump up, but his dad holds him back. Our main guy can't believe Raymond is actually hurting the creatures he literally just got. He clenches his jaw in pure rage, but he's totally stuck and can't do a single thing about it. After all that, the group finally heads over to the inn to crash for the night. His dad tries to tell him he did a great job, but the kid is just worried about his hurt creatures until Aquila tells him to go wash his hands first. He's in total shock that the creature's horns were actually sliced clean off. They didn't make a single sound. They say the first thing you gotta do when training a guide dog is teach it to never bark. The best guide dogs won't even make a sound, even if you burn them with a cigarette. Dogs are the ultimate ride or dies, and they can go as far as they want. For us, the monsters he's cooking up work the exact same way, and this little kid just won't stop crying. His dad tells him to stay cool and just ask questions, even though he's clearly just as ticked off. Ashella says he doesn't even care about the horns. He's just way more worried that these creatures are going to die so soon. They're totally gonna get blamed if that beast goes down too fast. R wonders if these things will die sooner without their horns, but honestly, He has no clue how long they're even supposed to live. Ars tells his dad the guy is super chill, but Ashila says he's just staying in his lane as a simple farmer. His dad's just a farmer who never went to school, but he's actually pretty sharp, even if Sheila knows some things he doesn't. This kid cleared the entire forest in record time, so honestly, it's no wonder everyone is totally freaked out by him. His dad desperately tried to talk sense into everyone, even going straight to the ruler of the land for help. They had so many creatures that they were planting crops like crazy, but even then, they just couldn't grow enough food to keep everyone full. The nobles were so desperate for those beasts in the forest that they handed over the selling license in no time. Arsis's dad pulls him aside to have a serious talk. Since they're already in the city, they might as well grab all the gear they need. He's seriously lucky to have a dad he can actually count on. Man, this guy is seriously the luckiest dude ever. As they walk through the city, the kid notices there aren't any wooden buildings around, so Ashela explains that magic makes wood catch fire way too easily. That's exactly why these buildings barely have any windows, since they don't even need them when magic keeps everything glowing. He realizes that magic is behind everything, but Ashley tells him it's all thanks to God's special protection. You get those basic spells the second the magic circle gives you a name. The kid wonders if that's really where the power is coming from, and right then, Mac gets a wild idea about the windows. They're used to the hard way of doing things, so swapping those windows for glass would be a total game changer. Once he starts using his magic, he'll be cranking out windows like crazy, and every construction crew in town is going to want him on the job. The merchant notices the kid has some huge goals, and his dad totally agrees, saying his son is always blowing his mind. Seriously, that little kid is the only thing keeping the entire village alive. Back then, starving to death was actually a pretty common way to go. For years, people just kept dying and the whole world was falling to pieces. The world was stuck in a never-ending war, and it got so bad that people were actually fighting each other just to get something to eat. He stumbled across some food, and even though the radishes in this land are usually gross and hard to eat, this specific one actually tasted totally different. It still tasted gross, but it was totally edible, and now it was huge, solid, and growing at insane speeds. Right then, he knew for a fact that if he just had more radishes, he could stop all these people from dying. He heard these crazy new radishes were coming from a village north of the forest, and when he finally made it there, he was totally blown away. Back then, the whole village was pitch black, totally empty, and everyone was starving. But things were totally different there, and that's exactly when our guys reached out to the merchant. This little kid handed over those sandals, and the crazy part is, he hadn't even been baptized yet. Ars was way different from the other farmers, so he got hit with a bunch of questions about what he could actually do. He loaded up on a massive stash of radishes and sandals, then swung by a bunch of farms to convince everyone to start growing them too. The merchant knew he had to get moving, but he was totally obsessed with that kid from the northern village. Fast forward a few years, and that same kid shows up again, trying to sell him something way different than sandals. The guy was totally blown away because these were the exact forest mushrooms he'd only ever mentioned to Ars. Those mushrooms sell for a ton of cash, giving this broke village a real shot at making it. But the forest is still way too dangerous for any kid to step foot in. The guy was super worried and warned him that he's way too young to be wandering into the forest like that. The little kid promised he was going to be totally fine. The merchant had met way too many kids who said that exact same thing, and every single one of them ended up dead. He tried to buy bricks from the kids to stay safe, but then our guy built a crazy new invention. He showed off a bunch of plates and cups, and the merchant was totally blown away, asking how a kid could make them, but our guy just kept it a secret. The merchant took a long look and started to realize something was definitely off with that little boy. This kid is probably a total noble, but he's keeping that a massive secret. He's convinced the kid inherited all that loot and comes from that ruined family, but he's actually dead wrong. They ran into each other again, and even though the kid had finally been baptized, our guy still managed to catch him totally off guard. The egg he was raising finally hatched into a super cool horse monster. The coolest thing about this guy is his constant flow of ideas. Because instead of just sticking to basic bricks and mushrooms, he's always hunting for something totally new to sell. R gets all serious and tells the merchant he needs weapons for the war, and suddenly, everything finally clicks for the guy. Ars is probably desperate to bring his family back to the top after they got wrecked in the war, so he's likely hiding out in that village with a family that isn't even his. Either way, there's no doubt this person is a total big deal. The merchant wanted to get on the kid's good side, so he hired him to work only for him. Give it some time and he'll probably take back everything he lost and return to being a noble. Ars snaps the merchant out of his crazy days. He asks what's the deal since they were just supposed to be shopping, but the guy just tells them to get moving. He's ready to do anything for the kid at any time, and now his whole life basically revolves around us. The second they get back from the trip, the whole Grim Shouts crew starts yelling for R. Her mom is honestly so hyped to finally see her again. She greets her with a huge hug, and after a few days of grabbing everything they need in the city, they finally head back to the village. They even manage to grab a massive saw to clear the fallen trees, a cart to haul everything, and the exact drink her dad wanted. The cash from his first sale is totally drying up, and since it was a one-time deal, he's officially running on empty. Now the cash from selling monsters is finally rolling in, and he's already got a whole basket of eggs ready to hatch. R decided to trade the Valkyrie monster for the same insane price as a dragon. He treats these super rare creatures like they're just property, hoarding them like a collection of expensive luxury cars. To keep the business running, he's got a secret. Every beast he delivered to the Fontana family had its horns chopped off. He's got to figure out what actually happens when those horns get chopped off. One of them is about to get its horns ripped off while the other stays totally fine, just so they can see the difference. Back in his old life, he used to chop off goat horns to keep them from hurting each other, so he thinks doing it now is totally fine. Basically, he's got to treat these monsters like servants who are just there to make everyone's lives easier. Ari says sorry to the creature and begs it not to flip out. He did a total 180 and sliced those horns right off. Everyone's actually doing okay, even the monster that got its horns ripped off. But something felt weird, like it was really trying to do something but just couldn't pull it off. Eri quickly figured out that if you don't have horns, you can't use any magic at all. The kid charges up mana in his eye, and both the horned monster and the one without horns are still totally loaded with magic. But get this, one of them can't even use it anymore. It's the exact same for humans, and his parents always told him that losing both hands means your magic is gone for good. You have to squeeze all that mana into a tiny point to make it work, so without fingers you're out of luck, and it's the exact same deal for their horns. One slice and their magic is history, and that's a massive tip he can use to win. The street vendor says he's never heard of magic beasts causing trouble, but honestly, there's something way more important going down right now. If the Valkyrie keeps using her magic to hatch those eggs, this super rare species is gonna be all over the place. Even with its horns sliced clean off, this monster is acting like it's totally fine. R straight up started cutting the horns off every horse and deer he was planning to sell. Someone asked the kid if he brought anything epic to show off. The kid asks if he's talking about the Fontana family's permission, and the priest tells him he's spot on. But he's not even talking about the monster-selling license, because in that ghost town, the only thing that actually made sense was the baptism record book. Whenever it rains and he's stuck away from the fields, he heads straight to the church to finally learn how to read. The priest shows off the paper proving the forest is officially theirs, while the kid says his dad is totally cool with paying taxes in wheat since he's always looking out for him. The priest explains that the document is about way more than just money, so our guy asks if there's any big news that flips the whole situation. The priest asks where the cleared land is, and our MC tells him it's hidden way out in the middle of the forest. The priest says there's absolutely no info on when or where they're supposed to measure the land. Since they're paying taxes in straight-up cash, it doesn't even have to be a farm anymore, and nobody has a clue what they're actually doing with that land. The priest wraps it up by saying the Fontana family treated him like he was the big boss. Even our guy is totally clueless about what's happening. The Fontana family rules the whole land, but they can't be everywhere at once, so they give people sweet perks to step up and govern for them. Most families pay for their special perks and have to send their own soldiers if things get crazy. R asks what it really means to be from a powerful family, and the priest explains they were just trying to stop the kid from raising those monsters somewhere else. They figured giving him the Fontana land would keep him stuck there instead of following his brother. But they never expected a kid to actually expand the territory and break every family rule in the book. R realized no normal kid could ever clear this area, and before he even knew it, he'd already become the big boss in charge. He realizes it's actually super easy to take over more land when everyone thinks you're a total weakling. But still, he's just gotta get out there and start exploring. He hops on Valkyrie and heads into the woods, using his magic to fix up the soil and knock down trees. The hornless ones are busy hauling those heavy logs to a new spot. The kid uses his land leveling skill to totally flatten the entire wasteland. Even if he takes over more land, he's still not making any more money. With those 4 letters ready to go, he's finally about to make some serious bank. Selling animals is a solid start, but he needs a backup plan since growing magic mushrooms and crops is way too much of a grind. Our guy realizes he can't handle everything solo, so he decides to hire a crew to grow the mushrooms and manage the fields. Before he can go exploring, he's got to find a part-time worker first. Like always, he hit up his family to see if anyone in the village could actually help him out. Ar's brother looks him right in the eye and tells him he better not forget about him. The kid is ready to take the job right then and there, but then he suddenly changes his mind and says no. Ars's brother keeps pushing and asks if their mom is on board, but she just freezes up. She says it's totally fine, as long as they both keep helping out around the house. R knows his brother would be unstoppable if he actually tried, but he's pretty sure that's never gonna happen. He's super worried because he knows Beto is a total slacker who loves to nap. But if he pulls that stunt at work, he's definitely getting the boot. Our MC asks Beta what he wants, and the kid has already made up his mind. He's straight up demanding that we hand over a Valkyrie. He complains it's totally unfair that only our side gets to ride, but the boy reveals he caught the brother trying to sneak a ride behind their backs. So, is there really any doubt left that Beto is totally obsessed with Valkyries? The kid says every real hero rides a Valkyrie to save the princess, and honestly, every guy is totally obsessed with that idea. And that's how our guy ended up hiring his brother as his first ever employee. The second Beto hits the Arce's hideout, he starts complaining that the place is a total dump and looks way more like a prison. The very first thing he did was start talking trash about the place. This definitely makes our side look like a total joke. This dude literally gets stronger every single day. He's always been obsessed with architecture, so now it's finally time to see what he can really do. He was actually a huge fan of the hotel they crashed at in the city for the night. Arce was checking out every tiny detail on the outside and how everything was set up, and he definitely wasn't just looking. He uses R as mana to scout out the rooms and see what's inside. Now all he's got to do is trigger his memory-saving magic. It's basically like he's using crazy CGI to build a 3D model of a building. He pushed himself to memorize every single room in the building, but he totally passed out from running out of mana on his very first try. He finally figured out why he failed. He filled up the entire cube instead of just mapping out the walls. On his second try, he pushed his mana through the blocks to memorize exactly how the whole building was put together. If he hadn't blown all his mana on empty space, he could have rebuilt the entire hotel in a single shot. Copying this just by watching is super hard, but doing it from memory should be a total breeze. First up, he pumps his mana straight into the dirt to start making building blocks. Then he pulls off the exact same move he's got memorized. To finish it off, he molds everything together until those blocks finally become one. He's actually hyped because he managed to build exactly what he was aiming for. The crazy experiment to rebuild the hotel was a total success. City buildings are stuck being boring squares, but our place is way better since we can add cool stuff like a stable for the Valkyries and a massive storage room. Building stuff straight from your head leaves messy gaps, so he probably needs to make those extra parts one by one. He copied a pro's exact design, so you know this place is totally safe. He can't copy doors or anything made of wood, but honestly, this is still more than enough for him. Making something that huge in just one go proves he's seriously leveled up. He's planning to move his whole base over to that building any day now. Ashla pulls her son aside for a quick talk, but the kid is totally confused and asks what's going on. This guy starts spilling all the details about the lumberjacks. A bit later, a lumberjack asks the kid why he's out so early, and if he's hunting for magic mushrooms, but the boy tells him he's there for something way different. He heard the lumberjacks were totally fuming about him cutting down trees, but he and Matic have been tight for ages since he's the one supplying those magic mushrooms. Matic finally realizes that this is the whole reason the kid showed up on his turf. Instead of starting a fight with the lumberjacks, the gang decided to go hit up Matic because he's the only one who actually knows the deal. He brought the guy a drink, but his dad almost threw a fit because he hated giving up his stash. Matic says they aren't exactly furious, but they definitely don't like how R is acting, and the kid realizes it's because he's been chopping down way too many trees. He's totally ready to keep hacking down trees to grow his land, but they could always strike a deal, or just tell him to clear the woods outside their borders. He can head way deeper into the woods to grab his logs, and Matic thinks that's a great call. It looks like this kid still has no clue what the real problem is. Ars wonders if the lumberjacks are even the issue, thinking maybe he messed up by using the Valkyries or just trying to do everything by himself. Our MC asks if they're embarrassed to be lumberjacks, but the bearded guy just shuts him down and says they're totally cool with it. Ars is basically spitting on their pride and all their hard work, which is exactly why everyone is so fed up with him. Our guy says he never meant to diss the lumberjacks, but Matic just asks if the kid is seriously this clueless. These guys were born and raised to be lumberjacks for life, taking massive pride in their work because trees aren't just a job to them. They're basically treasure. They seriously hate anyone who goes around cutting down trees for no reason. How are they going to react when they see this kid just hacking down trees and leaving them there to rot? The way he's acting is a total slap in the face to the lumberjacks and their pride. Ars stays quiet for a second before finally speaking up and saying he gets it. Matic says they also need those logs to upgrade the city, and he totally gets that we have a deal to handle with the burgers. That's why everyone gave him the silent treatment until now, because even though they're annoyed, they just want him to finally realize how much he messed up. He figures his dad heard the news straight from Matic, and now they're trying to fix the mess before it gets way out of hand. He got so obsessed with evolving that he completely tuned out everyone around him. Our guy is actually super smart and thinks everything through. Matic loves that even with those insane powers, the kid still actually listens to what people have to say. So the kid asks Maddox if he's down to help him out with his work. This kid is ready to jump in and start managing the forest right now. The forest north of the village is so massive that nobody even knows where it ends. And while he and Valkyrie cleared out a huge chunk of it, now they've got a major deforestation problem. The soil is losing its power to hold any water or nutrients, and if things get any worse, this whole area is going to turn into a total desert. They're running out of firewood fast, and if this keeps up, they won't survive the winter. R says that's exactly why he's so hyped to build a legit team to bring the forests back to life. They make sure to space the trees out perfectly so every single one can soak up all the light it needs. And just like that, they're finally going to have some trees. The kid knows his way around a farm, but he's totally lost in the woods, so he's going to need pros like Matic and the lumberjacks to show him the ropes. This deal might actually be enough to give both him and the lumberjack exactly what they need. Matic says nature's power isn't just something humans can use however they want. R asks if he gets how much planting trees would actually help, so Matic says he'll go talk it over with his crew. Matic got the lumberjacks on board by telling them it was way better than letting Ars mess with the forest however he wanted. After that went down, Arsus took charge of the north side and everyone just agreed he was the boss. Arskid is seriously hyped now that he's got a bunch of tree trunks to start growing his mushrooms. He's super hyped that Matic is running the forest now because it means he can finally level up his cultivation. Ars left the locksmith in charge of the doors and the entire place. He left his brother Beto in charge of taking care of the plants. The crowd started growing like crazy, but surprisingly, Beta was a total natural at keeping everyone in line. Our guy asks where his brother is, and the kid tells him he's out practicing how to ride those monsters. R realizes that Beto is totally slacking and dumping all his work onto everyone else. He apologizes to the man and the kid, but they tell him it's totally fine because helping out means they get a cut of the harvest. That kid lost his parents to the war and the guy can't find work anywhere in the village, so they're both super hyped for this chance. He would have just hired the guys and paid them in cash, but his brother took things way further than that. Because of that change, Ars could finally focus all his energy on evolving his monster squad. Plus, they were growing magic mushrooms right in that same spot. Everyone's asking if the whole field is getting totally wrecked. Beto found wild boar tracks in the fields, and Maddox says it looks like 2 adults and their piglets were roaming around. R just brushes it off, saying it's honestly no big deal. Beto wonders how he can be so chill when this is a massive problem, especially since everyone is too scared of the boars to even show up for work. Oris had dealt with boars raiding the farm before, but those beasts were way too smart to fall for any of his traps. It's super obvious what's behind all this trouble. This all started because the kid decided to push his evolution deep into the forest. A few trees are still standing, but he cleared out so many that the food chain is totally ruined and the animals have nowhere to live. Ars knows if he lets these boars slide now, their babies are just going to come back and wreck his crops later. He's got to step up and fix this mess because he's the boss of this land and owes it to all the farmers working the fields. Those boars are right there, totally devouring every single crop in the field. While hiding and watching the boars, our hero is shocked by how massive they are, and Beto warns him that arrows won't even pierce their thick skin. Our guy asks his brother what the move is, and Beto tells him they're the ones who have to fix this mess. The kid says they should hit up the rich folks and see if they'll wipe out those monsters for them. Maddox warns they'll probably be left to handle the mess alone, so Ars asks for some time to figure out his next move. He hops onto Valkyrie and charges straight for the boars. He tells his buddy they have to stick to the plan perfectly. This kid has to step up and face that monster head on. If that giant beast makes a move, they're totally toast and it's going to be a complete disaster. Valkyrie looks over and catches R totally shaking. His heart is pounding like crazy as the horse shuts its eyes tight. Suddenly he feels this warm energy washing over him. He notices Valkyrie is just waiting for him to chill out, so he and the mayor both close their eyes. They just keep pushing forward. This time he's way more sure of himself. Right then, Valkyrie takes off at a full sprint. She's charging ahead at total breakneck speed. Trying to land a shot while zooming through the air on Valkyrie's back is basically impossible. So he decided to cook up a totally different plan instead. R fires off a massive blast that spreads everywhere. Charging straight for those wild boars! Those tiny rocks smack right into the giant monster as he fires off a whole bunch of pebbles at once, while Valkyrie just keeps zooming ahead at crazy speeds. R hasn't turned that into a full spell yet, but he's definitely giving it his all. He's still super weak since he's not touching the ground, and right then, the wild boar lets out a massive roar. It starts hunting down Valkyrie and Ars as they scramble away, and Valkyrie bolts straight into the woods. Those wild boars are moving at some seriously crazy speeds. Staying away from those massive monsters is a total nightmare. But then our guy gets a crazy idea. But get this, that stone he just threw isn't even the main part of his plan. R screams at Valkyrie to use her physical enchantment and jump! That horse is moving like she can totally read his mind. She's hands down the most amazing partner he's ever had by his side. They dive right off the cliff, and it feels just like they're flying as a bunch of birds soar all around them. He's completely blown away because they're actually flying through the air. And just like that, Valkyrie slams straight into the dirt. They were already crazy strong, but that magic boost pushed their power straight through the roof. Suddenly, they hear the wild boars roaring, and then the heavy thumping of their footsteps. That's the trap they've set to pull off this whole strategy. The wild boars went flying off the cliff and landed at the bottom totally dead. Everyone's seriously doubting he survived after a drop from that high up. There's not even a single sign of life left in them. This trap is the only way to mix his earth magic with Valkyrie's insane speed, and he's totally ready to turn those wild boars into dinner. Then our guy just tells them to get lost and head home. And just like that, the kid's first ever real fight was finally over. Beto is hanging out with his brother, and Matic is totally blown away that the kid actually took down a wild boar all by himself. R promises that everything's gonna be totally fine from here on out. Beto is totally confused and asks the kid what he's even talking about. Beto drops the news that there isn't just one giant boar lurking around. You hyped? The kid says he's gonna save the next round of wild boars for us too. Our hero is absolutely losing it because that whole situation was a total nightmare for him. From then on, he was the go-to guy for taking out those massive wild boars whenever they showed up. Ars just kept blasting away with those scattered shots. He's out there grinding, using a massive tree as his personal punching bag. Letting that giant monster get close is a total death wish, so he's gotta level up his long-range game fast. The kid sharpens a bunch of rocks to use as weapons, but his range is still super short, only hitting targets about 20 or 30 meters away. His long-range attacks are leveling up fast, but they're still not strong enough to take down a wild boar. He realizes they have to find a way to guard the field, because that's the best way to keep whatever's lurking outside from getting in. The plan is to build a massive defensive wall and basically fence in the entire field. People always say you've got to learn from the legends who came before you. R says they need to start building the wall right at the edge where the field hits the forest. He's also got to make sure it covers all the spots he's planning to farm later on. One of those wild boars slammed into the wall and smashed a giant hole right through the trap. His defense needs to be totally maxed out, because you can never be too careful. Then our guy starts cranking up that massive wall. He rips a massive pillar out of the ground that's 5 meters deep and towers 10 meters high. He did a solid job, but he filled it with sand, so he's worried it's not actually going to be enough. He can only build 5 meters at a time, so he has to spam a bunch of walls and link them all together. Ars can totally feel it. His mana is way stronger now than when he built that hotel. The farm is so massive that he can't even see where it ends. If building a wall was already a spell, he'd be done in a second. But turning a move into a real spell takes a ton of work and time. The real struggle is trying to pull off that exact same magic again. He spent months grinding before he finally figured out the spell to make bricks. He still pulled off that wall spell insanely fast, pouring his mana into it and using memory preservation to lock the whole shape in place. Now pulling off that same magic over and over was a total piece of cake. Just like that, he mastered this spell way faster than anything else he'd tried. And to top it all off, Valkyrie starts making her move too. Valkyries can actually use their horns to cast the exact same spells as Arios. So this kid grabbed a bunch of these monsters to help him put that wall together. After grinding like crazy, we finally have magic mushrooms that'll totally recharge your energy. The kid still doesn't know how to craft a healing potion, so this mushroom is gonna have to be enough. They actually pulled it off and built a massive wall that stretches for 4 whole kilometers. Ars shows the wall to his brother and asks what he thinks, and Beto tells him he's actually a big fan. The only problem is, he's got zero clue where the entrance is actually hidden. Ars straight up admits that he totally forgot to even consider that. Beto offers to clear a path straight to the entrance to lead everyone through. The roads we built were getting super shaky and useless, so now we're finally stepping up to build a real one. He's gonna build 2 different entrances, one for the village and another for the forest. Concrete and asphalt roads are cool, but they're a total pain to keep up, so he remembers a special type of road that can actually last for ages. The Roman Empire actually built this road, and it's definitely the best way for us to go. First, they start by digging a huge trench right where the road is gonna be. Then they just stuff the whole thing with rocks and clay. To finish it off, he just uses some rocks to plug up the hole. The big catch is that this road only works in a straight line, and you need some serious high-level skills to even pull it off. Arsis is looking super annoyed, so someone finally asks him what's going on. It's actually his little brother Carl, who just got picked for the job a few days ago. Ars mentions it's super rare to see the little guy there, but the kid says he just finished helping out at home. Carl is super annoyed because Beto and Ars are always so busy they don't get home until way too late. Carl asks his brother what he's even thinking, and Ars admits that his glass windows were a total flop. The little kid tells them they've got a ton of those sitting in storage, and his mom is already getting annoyed by all the extra junk. Ar got the idea for his new invention while wandering the city, but Carl thinks the real issue is that everyone is so comfortable they don't even want anything new. With the economy being this bad, nobody's wasting their cash on stuff they don't actually need. But Ars is feeling pretty down because he literally has nothing he can sell. Carl says if it was him, he'd totally want that wooden furniture for himself. He was totally blown away by how much cooler everything looked now, and Arsh explained that a bunch of lumberjacks actually put it all together. Carl says he only showed up because that super strong smell of wood pulled him right in. But get this, these lumberjacks don't sell a single piece of furniture they make. Probably because it's just way too heavy to lug around. Everyone in this town treats their furniture like gold, so nobody's buying, which means his only shot at making a sale is heading to the big city. R thinks Carl's plan is actually awesome, and says he's gonna go talk to the lumberjacks. This guy is always hunting for stuff that wasn't made by his magic, and even if he's being a bit much, he's convinced the whole village would go broke without him. Now that our guy has expanded his territory, he's gotta start figuring out how to keep things stable for everyone else. Carl is super hyped and calls his brother a total legend, but Ars tells him he'll do big things one day and should just focus on having fun for now. Carl starts messing with him, saying they're basically the same age since there's only a 2-year difference. The kid looks at his brother and says he wants to learn magic too, especially since he heard he was the one who actually taught Beto. Ars starts complaining because their mom totally flipped out when he tried to teach Beto magic. Everything kicked off when Beto asked him how he was carrying stuff that should have been impossible to lift. That's when he started testing the physical enchantment on his own body just to see how powerful it really was. He was dying to see if anyone else would feel the same power, so he started teaching Beto how to control his mana. But get this, Beto was actually a total disaster when it came to earth magic. But check it out, the kid actually mastered that physical enchantment in no time at all. But he actually used it to turn on everyone in his own village. Ars doesn't really get why these kids are always fighting, but Beto has become totally unstoppable against them. The little kids were totally ticked off and called in some older guys to wreck Beto, but he just couldn't be stopped. Ars says Beto's skills shouldn't let him level up this much, but his huge frame and raw power are totally carrying him. Pretty soon, Beto started coming home every day covered in nasty bruises. Since the older kids couldn't beat him one-on-one, they started teaming up in gangs to take. Beto didn't care and just kept charging in, getting back up every single time he got knocked down. After all those intense battles, his power started leveling up like crazy. Their mom was totally heartbroken and started thinking it was all her fault. Beto kept getting into fights and ditching work no matter how much they yelled at him, and it got so bad his mom was constantly caught breaking down in tears. Before long, there wasn't anyone left who dared to stand up to Beto. That's why our group made sure they weren't just handing out magic to anyone who wasn't ready for it. But look, if Kalos wants to learn magic, we can totally teach him since he's a smart kid who doesn't just go around flexing his muscles. R says that by focusing mana in your brain, you can supercharge your memory and think at lightning-fast speeds. Teaching Kalos is going to make him way sharper, and even though R is looking back at his choices, he doesn't regret a single thing. Beto is a total pro at wrecking everyone in the village, but now he's focused on teaching Kalos to use his head instead of just his muscles. Ars can teach his brother how to read and do math so he can become the village manager they've been waiting for, and take a ton of work off his plate. Suddenly, this mysterious traveler shows up right on the road. He's super hyped to meet the legend who finally took down that massive boar. The traveler introduces himself as Gran, a merchant who actually crafts his own items. He heard some massive boars were wrecking the village, so he rushed over to see if the rumors were true. R asks if he's from the east, and the guy confirms that's exactly where he was born. Our main guy starts wondering, is this just a tiny island, or is it actually part of a huge continent? Grant explains it's not actually an island and asks if the kid knows a spot like that, but the boy just dodges the question. R says it's cool to meet him and mentions that the giant boar is a total wreck, but he can still go check it out if he wants. Grant says he really wants to meet the legend who crushed that kid and asks if he knows him, but the boy just looks at him and says, "That was me." The guy isn't buying it at all, so Ars explains how he set a trap and teamed up with his partner to pull it off. Grant is super mad and says that's totally wrong, because he heard giant boars were actually raiding the village in the North Forest. Beto pops up and says there were only a few boars, totally confused why that guy wants to see one this late in the game. Grant asks if they're seriously clueless, since these giant boars can actually power themselves up. R says that's the real reason they can't break through the monster's skin, and Grant totally agrees. They can turn the loot from those boars into all kinds of awesome gear. Ars gets super hyped and asks if they can use the boars to craft a sword even tougher than metal, feeling totally relieved he didn't throw the bodies away. Grant's been on the road forever hunting for the best materials, so Ars asks him straight up if he can actually forge some weapons. Grant says yes, and our boy is absolutely losing it with hype. The guy's got a stash of bones from both big boars and tiny piglets, so when Ars asks for his take, Grant says he's gotta go check them out first. He's totally hyped, saying that thing is a legit magical beast. Ar even managed to take down that boar right while it was casting magic at the kid, and the leftover mana proves it. When you take down a monster with magic, you're way more likely to score high-grade loot that lets mana flow through it perfectly. Ours is super hyped that the guy is crafting him a weapon from those boar bones, but then Grant says there's a huge problem. The guy says it's impossible to build because he's missing the right parts, and this village has absolutely nothing he can use. Is asking him a bunch of questions really what he needs right now? Grant explains he needs a furnace that can handle crazy heat and some monster mana to get things moving. But while Ars gets the furnace part, he's totally lost on what central mana actually is. Grant explains that central mana is what lets monsters use magic, and for humans, that power is actually stored in their arms. Ar hunts for a horn from his animals to see if it'll help, because if it works, they only have to worry about the furnace. Grant gets totally hyped and asks to check out that material for himself. Ar notices the guy is handling it like it's some kind of super expensive rare treasure. Grant says this whole thing is basically just one big gamble, but he's convinced he can actually make this work. He asks if those horns belong to the workers there, and Ar is super impressed that he actually knows his stuff. He says he knows about monsters that can actually use magic, and there are even places where they rip out their mana cores for research. But even then, he never imagined this place would be one of those villages. Ar gets super hyped and asks if any servant monsters can actually use magic, and Gran tells him they totally can. Any beast that can use magic is instantly ranked as a top-tier Class A product. Ar realizes he needs to change the price for the Valkyries, and if that merchant has been hiding the truth this whole time, he's going to make him pay. Ar asks if they really need a furnace for this, and Grant tells him it's a total must, but they're still gonna need a few more things to get it done. This little kid actually steps up and says he's gonna try to build a furnace. These bricks handle heat way better than clay, but since he's never tested them, he has no idea how much fire they can actually take. He'll do whatever it takes just to get his hands on a weapon. He was ready to go, but Grant warned him that even with a furnace, they'd need some serious wind to really crank up the heat. So that's the real reason they actually need 2 whole pairs of lungs. Ars starts whining that he can't pull it off because he only knows how to control the dirt. Grant tells the kid straight up that he'll never get a weapon if he doesn't start moving forward. Ars totally underestimated how much heart a creator puts into their work. And now Carl is stuck waiting at home realizing his brother never showed up. They finally finished building the furnace and that artificial lung. Grant is losing his mind because they're not just furnace masters, they totally own the workshop too. But the kid says he's beat and needs to get some sleep. Grant says they aren't done yet because they still need coal to power the furnace or even build a furnace just to make more coal. If they just torch the wood it'll turn to ash, so they've got to seal the room up and keep the air from escaping. He builds a straight-up igloo just so they can start making coal. Grant's been all over the continent, but he still hasn't found a single spot that has everything he needs. He's totally hyped as he grabs Ars's shoulder and says it's time to fire up the furnace, because the first step is always the biggest one. But our guy bolts the second he can, leaving Grant wondering where he's even headed. Our guy is reaching his breaking point and knows he can't deal with this anymore. Carl gets super hyped the second he hears his brother coming, even though he's totally wiped out. Ars tells Carl to go after that creepy guy and help him out. The little kid asks if he's seriously talking about a grand. The MC asks if he gets it, telling him this trip is great practice for the future. But Carl just asks if they're actually running away. The kid turns him down, saying he already built the whole furnace to make coal himself. Ar realizes that if they find top-tier coal in that spot, the land's value is going to skyrocket. Ars was totally tapped out, so he had to send his brother in to take care of Grant. A little while later, Ars finally showed back up and Grant started talking to him. He announced the mission was a total success, and it was all thanks to Carl. Carla's collapsed on the ground, totally out cold and completely drained. Grant reveals that the kid's only job was to keep cranking up the heat in that furnace. Ars is honestly feeling super bad for his brother. Grant's built a ton of stuff over the years, but gear this high quality is super rare and easily one of his absolute best works. Mars has got that sword in his hands. That blade is shining like a pearl, and he can totally feel a mysterious glow coming from the weapon. He notices it's super bright and realizes it's way shinier than any regular metal sword. But even with that, he can still slice right through his enemies. He can literally wrap his sword in mana whenever he wants. Grant says he wants to leave a little something behind for our people. This sword is actually made from a tiny piglet's tusk. He asks if that's a dagger he should use to protect himself. But Grant says it only looks like a blade for now, and that's about to change. This weapon uses piglet magic to grow, basically eating mana so it can evolve into something way stronger. Once that dagger grows into a full-size sword, it's going to be way more powerful. Grant says the sword won't get stronger with just one person's mana, so it has to be passed around to different people to become a total beast. That weapon is the Sword of Inheritance, and it's definitely the kind of high-tier gear those rich nobles would carry around. He's just like, yo, thanks for the gift. Grant is super hyped because it's rare for a creator to find this much high-quality stuff all at once. Grant says he feels straight-up lucky that he actually found their group. The little kid asks Grant if he wants to stay and keep crafting gear since they've still got a ton of materials left. Our guy takes the chance to ask if that sword has a name. Grant says that whoever makes a magic weapon is the one who gets to name it. He tells him to name the blade Kalgatam Guram, and just like that, our guy finally lands his very first sword. After that, he rushed over to back up his little brother. He hooked Carl up with some mushrooms that were straight-up magical. Grant is seriously blown away by the massive pile of magic mushrooms our guy has managed to collect. Ars is shocked that mushrooms are used for forging, but Grant tells him they're actually the most common ingredient for the job. This spot is basically a dream come true for every single craftsman out there. We've got a perfect dark spot on the wall for growing mushrooms where the sun never hits. The lumberjacks are actually helping him out by planting fungi inside the tree trunks so he can harvest them a few years later. Ars is cool with Gran making weapons from the mushrooms, but he better not use them all since that's his entire mana supply. Grant realizes these are potion ingredients, but Ars admits he has no clue how to actually brew them. He's just munching on mushrooms to refill his mana, but Grant thinks that's way too old school. He asks if he can whip up a potion with that mushroom, and Ars is totally blown away by his skills. The guy says the best move is to turn those mushrooms into mana potions first, and our hero asks if he can watch the whole thing. Grant's totally down and wants the kid to learn the secret recipe and even help him brew the whole thing. The guy is super hyped as he rushes over to wake Carl up. R gets his brother tucked into bed and tells him he can just keep on resting. Once he finally wakes up, he's got to go track them down. Get hyped, because it's finally time to start the second part of crafting these items. R downs the mana potion and realizes it actually tastes just like tea. It's made the exact same way. Just boil the mushrooms and mash them up right after. Then all you gotta do is toss it in a jar of water and give it a good mix. Grant sees the charcoal is finally making the mushroom boil, so he asks what kind of weapons are being built out of those crystallized marshmallows. He says he's actually gonna craft some armor this time, and our guy is getting totally hyped up. They've gotta soak the armor in a magic potion to toughen it up. It's not going to be perfect, but it's still way better than regular gear, and the team is just hyped that Grant can craft so much stuff. Seriously, thanks for making the trip out to his village. The Grantels are totally hyped and getting ready to pull some massive all-nighters for the next few days. R is super bummed that he won't be getting any decent sleep tonight. Honestly, our guy would have worked himself to death if he didn't have a recovery spell to keep him going. At long last, the armor is finally finished. This thing was actually made out of the leather from those giant boars. Grant thinks it looks awesome, but it's way too big, so the kid says he'll just wait until he grows into it. Forget what he's into, because this is the perfect way to track down anyone who's failing out in the fields. The armor fit Beto perfectly. R is just waiting for his brother to grow out of it so he can grab it for himself. Grant is totally pumped and asks what the next move is, but as soon as R says they should rest, the guy starts freaking out. Ars asks him if he's really not going to show his workers how to make the stuff. But honestly, Grant says he'd way rather just build something totally new. The kid realizes he's got to spark the guy's imagination, so he tells him to take those bricks and build a whole building. Grant just stares at the bricks, totally lost and not knowing what to do next. R says he can't use a single brick more than what he's already got right there. The kid's big plan is for Grant to build a super creative house that he can use as a mold. Our MC tells Grant to use those bricks to build a massive place that's all about giving the residents a sweet spot to live. Grant thinks that request is actually pretty wild. And just like that, he's jumping straight into the action. RS is also looking to put a little experiment to the test. He's hyped to test out the gear they forged from those Valkyrie horns. He brings all the gear together in one spot, stacking up the mana potion, the clay, magic bricks, a Valkyrie's horn, and a massive boar tusk. Ars wants a super tough brick, so he smashes his old one, mixes the pieces with clay, and builds a brand new, stronger version. He's gonna use all the secrets from his past life to pull this off. He tosses the horns and fangs into the clay and dumps the potion right in. He whipped up a bunch of different test versions, changing the mix of materials every single time. Once he finished shaping it, he shoved it right into the mold. But all he really did was make a massive pile of mistakes. But he's not giving up yet, and gets right back to work on a brand new mixture. He slams the hammer down again, and the loud echo makes the little boy turn to look. That brick didn't even have a scratch on it. Instead of his usual boring brown bricks, these ones have a crazy marbled look. He literally just used some basic materials and a catalyst to pull off something that insane. He was obsessed with finally smashing through that metal-hard strength. R starts thinking about his past and realizes his old life is basically leaking out of his brain. So he decides he's got to take control and do it all himself. He actually pulled it off and made a brick that's basically as tough as solid metal in that world. But the experiments aren't over yet, and now R is pumping his magic straight into the brick he's holding. He locks his memories into the brick to give it a totally unique design. He slams both hands right onto the ground. Now he's got a brand new spell to make bricks that are basically unbreakable. So now he can make these bricks without any of the horns or fangs, but even then, this was way different from the epic Roman roads the kid had in his head. To build a legit Roman road, he's got to bust out the settling spell. He tried his best, but those bricks were just too solid, and besides, cars really need a smooth road to drive on anyway. Now he's got to lift up the sides to make some paths for everyone on foot. When Ars runs into Grant again, he's already finished building this massive tower. The kid's shocked at how huge the place actually is, and Grant explains he added a bunch of windows just to save on building supplies. R finally finished building the roads, and Grant was super hyped about how they turned out. He whipped up a massive door and a bunch of glass windows. Grant says Carl told him our place has a bunch of glass windows he can't even sell. The kid notices that if Grant builds things like art, he can save tons of materials and add even more upgrades to the building. Our MC is totally blown away that this guy used actual physics to build the most perfect structures possible. He thanks Grant, saying this place has way more room than the hotel he built. R promises to pay the kid for the job, and Grant says that's definitely going to come in handy. Grant also asks if he can finally get the okay to build his own house. This guy spent his life wandering from place to place, but he was always searching for that one perfect spot where he could finally kick back and live stress-free. Villagers are already begging Ars to build their houses inside the wall, but he's shutting them all down because that's strictly the Valkyries' territory. But honestly, you don't find a genius like Grant every day, so they give him the total go-ahead. And just like that, Grant became the very first person to actually live in his own territory. Our boy heads home for a meal because his mom's cooking is straight up fire. Plus, with Grant on our side, we've got absolutely nothing to worry about. The MC's big brother is already engaged at just 14, and since he's the firstborn, he's set to inherit the whole family estate and pass it to his own son one day, even though their house is already getting way too cramped. His family is super close, so our family is always hanging out with them. Mary asks if Ars wants seconds, but this kid has been ready to handle life on his own since he was only 5 years old. He holds out his bowl and asks his mom for another round. He finally made the choice to pack up and ditch his parents' place. He's kicking things off by getting the land totally ready so he can start building. First, he's moving the whole base south, away from the wall and right into the middle of the land. Now he's going to use his mana to rebuild the house that Grand made. He's swapping those basic bricks for super strong ones, making the whole house look like a fancy marble mansion. He uses those super tough bricks to build a massive wall that stretches for a whole kilometer around his house. Next, he's planning to build roads that lead straight from the center to the exits. R's planning to put Grand's house south of the village, and man, he is super hyped about building this place. He already got permission and finished his house, so now he's using his powers to save the whole design. Our guy even set up some spots right along the road heading to Beto. He was desperate to get away from home, so now he's living at the hotel and renting out rooms to the people working in the fields. R picked the forest further north as the perfect spot for the lumberjacks to plant new trees and build their secret den. So Matic and the rest of the gang need to get moved over to that area. That northern forest still has a long way to go before it's fully evolved. R's home is right in the center, packed with Valkyries and magic mushroom farms, and he's making sure those horned girls never leave. This is how our crew cooked up the master plan for that land. By the time he finished the walls and was ready to move his house, he was already 9 years old. The merchant is absolutely losing it because R just gave away some of his land to a random traveler. He asks why the kid kept him in the dark, but the MC just says he had no clue a merchant would actually need land. The guy admits he's done with the traveling life and wants to build his own shop, so he asks them to hand over some land to make it happen. The kid suddenly remembers that the merchant totally lied to him about there being no beasts that can use magic. He asks if they're even now, since he also had no clue that Valkyries could use magic. Ars found out these creatures are actually super expensive magic users, but since he's only sold the hornless ones, they can't use any powers at all. The kid gives the merchant the green light to open up his massive shopping center right there. Our guy says he'd love for it to be a food shop, and the merchant tells him he'll definitely think about it. Then he looks the kid in the eye and says he's got something huge to tell him. Word on the street is that a group of seriously dangerous people are lurking around those parts. They're all whispering about our guy, and they're actually terrified because they think he's a total menace. Our hero is totally fuming because he's basically a literal angel. He claims he's being totally safe, but the merchant points out he literally just built a massive fortress out of nowhere. If you look at it that way, the nobles running the show are probably gonna hate how he looks. Tax day is creeping up fast, so the collectors are gonna show up any second, and our guy better be ready to handle all their questions. The tax collectors weren't this nosy last time, so our main guy asks what this dude is even talking about. He screams at the top of his lungs that he's not gonna say it twice. Fontana is officially taking that land for themselves, and if our guy tries to fight back, he's going straight to jail. Every year it's tax time, so the villagers pile up all their wheat and send one person to deliver the whole stash to the collector. He's always paid his taxes in straight gold since the collectors come right to his house, so he has to be a good host. Usually they just grab a meal, take the gold. The Fontana family was moving in to take ours land, and if he tried to stop them, he'd be picking a fight with all the rich elites, which is exactly what the merchant was warning him about. The tax collector warns that the area is crawling with creeps, so our guy is getting royal protection since those creatures he's raising are a massive deal. Most people think protecting the Valkyries is the smart play, because even if they lose their freedom, they'll never have to worry about starving or fighting in a war again. He should be totally stoked since he started out as just a broke kid from that village. He doesn't even care because he remembers how awesome and free his past life was, and he's definitely not staying locked up anymore. Out of nowhere, a massive crash rings out, and the tax collector stops in his tracks, wondering what the heck just happened. R realizes the noise is coming from the stables and bolts over to help the Valkyries. Suddenly he hears his brother screaming at something to stay put. He finally gets there and is totally blown away by what he sees. Carlos gets slammed onto the ground right next to a Valkyrie. This dude demands to know what R is really after, and with his sword drawn, he asks the MC if he's gonna try to get in his way too. He was just about to snag that monster when Carl suddenly tackled him. He readies a massive swing with his giant sword, and Ars is totally starting to freak out. Just then, Beto bursts into the room shouting for his brother. He's seriously stressing out over what might happen to Ars and Carl. Our main guy is finally starting to wake up. Carl's going to be okay, but he's still totally knocked out. Turns out the Valkyrie was the one keeping him safe. He's got a cut on his head, but it's honestly just a scratch. Beta starts asking how R is holding up. The kid's whole body goes totally stiff. He still remembers that blade coming down for the kill, because that's the exact moment his hidden powers finally snapped. He moved in a flash and landed a perfect hit right in the guy's gut. He landed a strike that went right through the guy, sending him crashing to the floor. Ars just shrugs it off and says he's totally fine. He didn't have a single scratch on him, but Beto knows the real damage isn't on the outside. Too bad Ars is totally shutting him out. Beto says their dad is heading out to talk to the crowd, so he should just meet up with them once Carl finally wakes up. Ars is super relieved his brother finally decided to let it go. He didn't even flinch as he blasted the soldier with a stone shot, taking him out instantly. Even the merchant has no clue how our guy is gonna make it out of this one. If that soldier snitches about the Fontana mess, an entire army is coming for them, and Ars is seriously wondering if he should just pack up and bolt. Grant says they should just bail and try their luck in a new land ruled by different nobles. If they're beefing with the Fontanas, they're gonna need an ally, and they'll be hyped to have our guy since he can literally grow monsters to do all the work. The big problem is that this new place is gonna treat them just as bad as the Fontana family did. When a regular guy stands up to a noble, is it really too much to just ask for freedom? Beto thinks they're totally insane and says if the army rolls up, they have no choice but to fight back. He's wondering if our guy is actually cool with his land being snatched away, because what was the point of all that grinding since he was a kid? Plus, he straight up took out a soldier. Carl might not survive the next round and those soldiers will end up killing everyone, so they've got no choice but to fight back. R admits that even with his insane magic, there's no way he can take down an entire army alone. Beto yells at him to stop being an idiot, but his brother jumps in to fight, saying it's a big brother's job to protect his little bro. Plus, he's way more of a pro at riding a Valkyrie. Matic jumps into the fight too, because there's no way he's just gonna sit back and watch a kid who's basically his grandson get killed. He's down to back us up if the kid actually decides to throw down. Once he kicked off the reforestation project, the woodworkers, furnace crews, and lumberjacks finally stopped stressing about where their next meal was coming from. Ours was now the main focus for every single one of those lumberjacks. Now they basically owe this kid their lives forever. The little kid gives Matic a massive hug to say thanks, and his dad finally takes a huge breath of relief. He tells them that if they're all going that far, then as a dad, there's no way he's getting left behind. Ars's dad decided he wasn't going anywhere, because he knew he had to step up and protect his family. R honestly never thought he'd find even one person willing to put their life on the line for him. The merchant says if everyone's down to do this, then he's in too, and he'll start digging up info from the others. R asks if these merchants only care about getting paid, and the guy warns him that if he walks away, he's done selling those creatures for good. Plus, he totally feels the same way about that old guy. Anyway, he's totally on our side, but he seriously needs to figure out how to get more people to back him up. This kid is a total pro at planning stuff like this, and he promises to give the merchant a massive piece of land once everything is finally over. The only reason he even likes being alive is because he's free, and that's exactly what this is all about. Every single person there is ready to throw down just to set him free. He's doing it all to keep his family safe and protect his home and everyone living there. Our crew is going to war with the nobles to finally win back their freedom. He needs to start building a squad, but since paid help will just bolt the second things get dangerous, he has to find people who are actually down for the cause. Ars decides to offer a massive reward for anyone helping him take down the nobles, giving them a real reason to actually put their lives on the line. His reward is his signature magic that lets him fix the soil, level the ground, and build massive walls, and anyone who's been following him knows just how big of a deal this really is. He says the naming ceremony is how he'll snag that magic, and from now on, he's officially Ars Baruka. That village is going to be called Baruka, and every single person there is changing their last name to Baruka too. From that point on, everyone knew them as the Baruka family. Matic thinks this is going way too far, but if they're going to take on the Fontana family, they need to boost their rep just to get a seat at the table. His dad says only the priest can handle the naming ceremony, and as far as they know, anyone else doing it is straight up impossible. But Ars still has a massive secret weapon, that magic circle. Ars says if they stick by him, they'll be named Baruka, but this magic circle ceremony is super risky because nobody knows what could happen. Using a magic circle on someone who already has a name is super risky, so he just made Baruka a last name instead of changing their whole identity. R summons a glowing magic circle right in front of him. Next, he officially gives Beto, Asira, and Trian the last name Baruka. He takes down Madhark Gran the exact same way, doing it all for the sake of Ars Baruka. Every single person there has to be named. Beto's only memory from when he was a kid is being absolutely starving. His family had to give up all their food just to pay the bills. While all this was going down, his little 3-year-old brother actually started working out in the fields. Right then, Beto realized he was totally wasting his energy on something that was never gonna work. Our guy actually scored some insane land, and even though Beto had no clue how he pulled it off, the results were impossible to miss. He actually got way stronger than Beto, even though he's 2 years younger. This kid never really understood how he got so insanely strong. Right then, his brother just straight up told him his secret method without a second thought. Beto was super confused because it was so complicated, but he figured out the secret is just building up mana inside his body. He was training his muscles to help out in the fields while our guy was busy fixing things up to make the place even bigger. Everyone was totally blown away when they realized we were the ones keeping the Ashera fields running. They wanted to get the kid to help them out too. Ars turned them down right then, saying he already had other stuff he needed to take care of. After that mess, the whole village started saying he was a total villain. The adults played it cool, but Beto overheard everyone whispering that their leader was a total jerk who only cared about himself. They were totally scheming to take the kid out for good. Ars is a way better fighter than Beto, but he honestly has no clue what's going on in that kid's head. But no matter what, he's still our little brother. He decided to take out anyone who talked trash or tried to mess with him. He felt super guilty making his mom worry every time he showed up home all beat up. But there was no way he was letting anyone get away with trying to hurt his brother. He realizes he's focusing way too much on his fist, when the real power actually comes from his waist and hips. Beto was absolutely fuming at their insults because he was putting everything on the line for his brother. Ars was a total pro at moving his body, and Beto had already tried to scrap with him a bunch of times. Beto started training like a beast because Ars told him he couldn't lose to anyone his own age anymore, and as he got stronger, he even started picking up a following. Ars was busy hatching monster eggs to hand over to the nobles, and he even crushed a massive boar that was wrecking the village, making Beto realize his brother is a total beast, though he's still not planning on losing to him. He's been training non-stop to master riding his Valkyrie while swinging his sword at the exact same time. He just got a massive power boost because he's determined to crush that giant boar and refuses to keep losing to those knights. All of this is happening just because he's the big brother. Suddenly, this crazy magical energy starts swirling all around Beto. Arts crashes to the ground, totally wiped out. That magic is way too much for his brain to handle, and now he's just standing there in total shock. Grant's mind is blown by that insane magic, while Beto says their own power is actually super cool too. The kid looks over and realizes he actually pulled it off. That's going to give Beto a massive power boost. The kid wants them to recruit the villagers by warning everyone that the greedy nobles are coming to snatch their land and everything they own. And now they're straight up planning to take out Carl and Ars. They're finally standing up to those jerk nobles to take back their freedom, and the kid is really counting on everyone there to have his back. Anyone who steps up with their family gets magic and land, so Ars wants to win them over by showing them that helping him is a total win. Beto rushes out to handle the situation himself, while Maddox heads off to get the rest of the lumberjacks on board. Our hero hits up the trio for some answers, and the guy promises to dig up some intel on the enemy troops. He reaches out to Ars, handing it over and warning the kid to watch his back. Trion's looking dead serious right now. He warns the kid to stay alive, and the boy grips his hand back, promising he'll make it. He never expected to hear those words, especially since a farm kid standing up to fancy nobles is totally unheard of. Still, he's gotta have a plan B ready just in case he can't find enough people to join him. They usually just send out 50 people at a time whenever a war kicks off. Compared to that, having 78 people is actually a massive crowd. Maddox says the lumberjacks are officially on board, and since these guys are total powerhouses, they're going to be a massive help. Beto is a total hit with the younger crowd and they all flock to him, but he won't stop complaining even though he's the one who actually gave them work. But there's one massive thing you need to know. The guy tells Mary he's heading straight for Ars' place and asks Era to look after their mom, while someone else checks in to see if Hector is doing okay. Hector's like, "We're good as long as Ars is with us." He's the kid's brother who jumped into marriage way too soon. The big reason for all this is that she's actually the chief's daughter. Ars realizes her dad was probably only going to give her that land if she actually married Hector. The village of Baruka has totally changed into a whole new place. Ar blasted everyone there with his magic circle power, and the crowd is stoked because their farm work is about to get way easier. They're super thankful for the help, but the kid is honestly just totally wiped out. Beto asks if he's finally done naming everyone, and the MC says yeah, but he only pulled it off because that recovery potion saved him. Beto asks what's up with the outfit, and Ars just explains that Hector was the one who brought it for him. Their mom actually made this as a birthday gift, but she held back because a massive war was right around the corner. Beto is losing his cool and wants to ambush the enemy right now, but Ars tells his brother they need to chill and wait a bit longer. Beto asks what the plan is since just sitting around feels totally pointless, but Ar tells him they have to wait for the merchant to bring back the info. He realizes there's just no way to keep 100 people safe across 4 kilometers of wall. Those walls were built for giant boars, not sneaky humans, and he's way more powerful than any regular farmer anyway. Ars rushes everyone to keep moving and Beto is totally hyped up. But then the kid speaks up and says that even after all that, they're definitely not going to the city. They're heading straight for the nearby villages down south. They've got to explain why they're actually fighting the nobles, because a ton of people think this war is totally pointless. But people are still starving and freezing to death, and they've officially had enough of the greedy nobles who take all their money while ignoring their empty stomachs. Ar is heading straight for the other village. The whole crowd is losing their minds and they're totally shutting him down. The kid's dad says any village would freak out if someone showed up armed to the teeth, and now everyone is just glaring at them with pure hatred. Ar suddenly realizes they just barged into the village's territory without even telling anyone why they're there. Suddenly someone yells out his name. This kid with a massive sword steps up and demands to know what they're after. Ar notices that a sword as big as his whole body is actually super rare. These farmers use tritons as weapons, and it's actually super rare for any of them to own a real sword. If you're trying to save money, you definitely pick a smaller weapon instead of a massive sword that uses way too much metal. Ar's dad takes one look and realizes the kid is actually Vargas. Everyone around there treats him like a total legend after he made a name for himself in a bunch of wars. He's finally back and things are gonna get crazy if our guy doesn't come up with a plan right now. Beto starts screaming that the Fontanas are nothing but bullies picking on Baruka, and since they're done being pushed around, he tells everyone it's time to team up and fight back. Vargas points his sword right at Beto, but the boys didn't care and suited up in tough armor made from giant boar skin. And get this, he's actually riding on the back of a Valkyrie. Nobody would ever guess this kid is actually just the second son of a family of farmers. Vargas is putting on some serious heat, but Bato's gear is honestly just as insane. Now they're finally standing on equal ground. Vargas asks Beto if he's really the legend from Baruka who crushed the boars. Beto denies the whole thing and then calls us out. Then he reveals it was actually his little brother who stood up to those massive monsters. Vargas just laughs it off, calling the whole thing a hilarious joke. He says he could laugh about that for hours and tells the whole group to just head home. Beto totally snaps and yells at everyone to work together, telling Vargas to stop living in a fantasy and finally take some responsibility. The two of them start screaming at each other, and they are totally losing it. Looks like there's no talking their way out of this. It's time to throw hands. That's when Ars jumps into the fight and launches his own attack. He fires pebbles at the ground with insane speed. He tells everyone to just put their weapons down and stand down. Our whole path is already 100% set in stone. Then he tells them he's just there for a chill, peaceful talk. Vargas is totally blown away that it was actually a magic attack. He warns the kid that if he tries to make a move, he's gonna take him down instantly. Vargas charges straight at them, and our MC is freaking out because he really thought the kid would have stopped by now. This guy is a total blur the second he starts running. If our guy doesn't find a way to stop him in his tracks, he's basically toast. Our guy snipes a pebble right next to Vargas. The guy dodges and strikes back with his sword, leaving Ars totally stunned that he blocked the hit without even flinching. Vargas figured out that Ars actually has to point his hand exactly where he's about to strike. If things keep going like this, it's all over. This is gonna be a total disaster. The kid finally realizes that every single person in that village is in debt to Vargas. Our guy just won't stop trying to take him out. He just kept doing it, over and over, like he was stuck on repeat. His dad warns him that there's no way he's beating Vargas if he keeps fighting like this. At this rate, he's just gonna burn through every last drop of his mana. He aimed right for the one spot Vargas forgot to protect. He aimed right for that spot, hoping it would pack the biggest punch. Then he just slammed Vargas with a perfect direct hit. But the guy didn't care, cutting right through its path as he charged straight for it. Vargas pulls up and stops right in front of our ride. He's finally grabbed the kid, and our hero is losing his mind because Vargas doesn't have a single scratch on him. Wait, maybe this power is actually making him way tougher to take down. He can pull off the same trick by boosting his physical power. It turns out Vargas can actually beef up his defense right in the middle of a fight. R smirks as it all clicks, and he starts powering up for his next big move. He slams a direct hit right into the middle of Vargas's chest, sending the guy flying through the air. Vargas's sword snaps right in half and clatters to the ground. Everyone's jaw just hit the floor. Art steps up and announces that the winner has finally been decided. Vargas is totally cornered and has to give up. The guy is totally dazed and asks what the heck just hit him. He's just slumped there on the ground, totally out of it. R reveals he was actually firing pebbles, which is why he kept spamming those moves to shut down the counterattack. RS is totally hyped when he finally finds out. There's actually someone else out there with powers just like his. He's honestly just hyped to see his move work so well against guys who actually have real battle experience. Vargas snapped his sword up in front of him to get ready, using it as a shield to tank the damage. Ars knows he needs a guy like Vargas, so he reaches out and pulls the man up to his feet. The guy finally gives up, but he begs them not to lay a finger on the villagers. That is totally not what we're planning to do. Still, you can't forget that his entire squad is armed to the teeth. R claims he's not actually looking to hurt anyone. He just wants to team up with them so they can finally take down those stuck-up nobles. Vargas promised he's gonna fight right by our side. But back at the kingdom, things were getting totally crazy. Someone calls him out saying the whole mess happened because he totally dropped the ball. Now he's leading his whole army straight to Villa Baruca. He's swearing to get this done for the sake of the Fontana family name. Suddenly a brick pops right out of thin air. Vargas is totally stunned because he never thought he'd be able to pull off magic like that. Ars gave the name Baruca to every single villager who was down to join his squad. It's awesome seeing everyone finally start to work together, even if that surprise fight with Vargas caught them totally off guard. He showed off his crazy fighting skills and finally got everyone to team up for the same goal. R just absolutely wrecked Vargas the hero. Our guy must be a total beast, and if the squad sticks with him, they'll definitely crush those nobles. A bunch of people were totally ready to ditch him if things got ugly, but that all changed after the showdown with Vargas. Everyone's hyped to fight for their freedom as Vargas asks the general what the next move is. Ars is totally confused about who this general guy is, but Vargas just looks at him and says, "Dude, I'm talking about myself. He's the one who rounded up that entire army, so he's definitely the general calling the shots." R says everyone only showed up because of Vargas, so he's the one who should be the general. His friends mean the world to him, so R actually left his own village just to keep them safe. Heading to the next village over was easily the best move they ever made. R decides they're just gonna set up camp right there. A massive river flows right between Baruca and the capital of Fontana. R notices the Fontana family has to go through this spot to reach Baruca, but because the water is so crazy, there are only a couple of places where they can actually cross. R shouts that it's time to set up camp, telling everyone to level the ground so he can start building the platforms. Now the whole place has turned into a village of tiny little houses. There are over 100 people, but they should be able to fit everyone in just fine. Now they've got to build some massive walls to keep everyone safe. Everyone starts using their powers to build massive walls, and it's a total game changer now that they can use magic without him having to teach them every step. R uses the naming ceremony to blast all his magic knowledge into everyone's heads, but some people still can't even figure out how to build a wall. They can't even pull it off, and their brains are totally fried trying to make sense of it. R realizes this is the exact same thing that happened at the road settlement, and when he looks closer, he sees these people have almost no mana left. Making walls and roads eats up way more mana than normal magic, and when R tried to push past his limits, his brain just couldn't process the info, and he totally failed. Ars isn't sure if it's the device or the spell, but you can only learn magic that your mana can actually handle. The kid wants to see if his magic changes once he gets some mana, and Grant tells him he's got something cool to show him. He built him a custom armored vest that was made just for him. Even though it was a total rush job, the gear turned out looking absolutely fire, and after that crazy fight with Vargas, Ars finally realized that charging into the front lines without the right equipment. Vargas swings the sword and complains that it's way too shiny for his taste. But he's not the one picking what he brings into the fight. Ars handed the toughest swords to his inner circle since they knew the plan and could lead the rest of the village. Ars finally got a solid base and all the gear he needs, so now there's only one last thing to take care of. Ars is totally stunned after Tri reveals that they're up against an army of 500 enemies. Baruka only has about 50 people, so seeing 500 enemy soldiers show up is honestly terrifying. Grant realizes that just by building that base and bringing all those people together, he's already totally blown the Fontana family's expectations away. But they're still way outnumbered, and there's no way they can hold them off without some serious backup. R says they've got to stop hiding and settle this in a total head-on fight. Vargas is down for the plan because if those defenses fall, almost nobody is making it out alive. The Fontana family actually thinks they're just a bunch of stubborn farmers. But get this whole squad can actually use magic. If they can mess him up enough to make him charge forward, they've got a real shot at winning. But they only have one chance to pull off the perfect ambush. He used to just toss these words around in video games, but now that he's living it for real, they feel way more intense. Valkyrie walks right up to the guy and sinks her teeth into him. It turns out she's actually trying to bring her friend back to life. Ars tells her he's counting on her, and they're sticking together until they finally win their freedom. This kid is ready to do whatever it takes just to reach his one goal. The farmers step up and face the enemy head-on. Since they're nobles, they've got tons of metal weapons, giving them a huge edge in the boys' plan. The army size is exactly what the merchant said it would be. The farmers spot someone heading their way and immediately start shouting to get everyone's attention. There's a guy riding a Valkyrie that doesn't even have horns. Suddenly, the guy starts yelling at the top of his lungs to everyone in Baruka village. He's claiming our guy actually broke the law. He's straight up defying the nobles' orders and just beat down the tax collector. Since they're the ones guarding this land, they definitely can't afford to be nice guys. The people of Baruka shouldn't have to carry this guilt, so Hector asks the boy if he's really just going to stand there and stay quiet. He yells that if everyone just drops their weapons and surrenders, they can all go back home and live a normal life. Hector warns that if the villagers keep listening to that, they're gonna cave in and things will end in a total disaster. Alright, it's time for the big speech before the fight finally kicks off. R realizes the fight has already kicked off. He's not sure if he can give a speech that hypes up his crew while totally trashing the bad guys. He's got a secret trick to chill everyone out, and it's all about using the power of his own voice. He focuses his mana right on his vocal cords to supercharge the vibrations, making his voice sound insanely loud and clear. Ars reveals that the Fontana family actually signed a paper proving the kid is the real owner of Baruka. But once they saw how much the city was leveling up, they decided to just swoop in and steal it from everyone. They're trying to snatch their land and every single thing they own. They're even trying to snatch up every single person living in Baruka. Ars charges his voice with mana to send a wave of courage straight into the crowd's hearts. They've got to use their own strength to protect what's theirs, and the Baruka resistance isn't about to back down to those greedy nobles. They're done letting those psycho nobles wipe out anyone they want just because they're in a bad mood. They're done being controlled like puppets, and now it's finally time to fight back. It's finally time for them to take their freedom back. The enemies are totally losing it because they can't believe these farmers are actually charging straight at them. The captain screams for them to hold their spots and keep their cool. R's charging forward at insane speeds on his Valkyrie. The guy starts to bail, but our hero screams at him to stay put because the kid isn't actually a monster. Then he straight up tells them to stay quiet and not interrupt him. He dropped a whole group of guys with just one single hit. Kolgakem is such a beast at fighting on horseback that he actually turned a handle into his own custom weapon. The big win is that he used a physical boost, and it looks like he's definitely leveled up his strength too. R spins his staff around and warns them to get lost if they don't want to be sent flying. He totally seized the opening and charged in, catching the guy off guard before he could even get ready. Watching a kid wreck grown men totally messed with their heads, so he didn't even have to fight the guys who were forced to show up. The only person R actually wants to fight in this battle is the commander on that hornless Valkyrie. But suddenly someone shouts for him to knock it off. He's getting way in over his head all by himself. Even on his horse, he's keeping a crazy amount of distance from his own army. With their boosted bodies and those pebble shots, these soldiers are way stronger than the guys they're fighting. Even as a little kid, he's getting way stronger, probably because he's been soaking up mana from the air since he was tiny. But the others were just using the mana they already had inside, so obviously they were way weaker. But get this, it turns out the more mana you have, the better the quality actually gets. That's why almost nobody can actually sync up with him. R hits up Beto and Vargas. He tells his dad and Matic to take charge and lead the rest of the group. They're pushing straight for the main army gathered right in the center. R's, Beto, and Vargas are the heavy hitters of the Baruka army, and this squad is basically the backbone of the entire enemy force. But our guy already knows his attack isn't going to leave a single scratch on them. These soldiers are packing way more mana than the rest, and they're already bracing themselves behind their shields. He notices they're totally trying to shut him down. So he's really about to start an invasion. But the second he slams into those shields, his staff slips right out of his hand, and Arskit starts panicking because he's totally wide open. He whips out his sword and gets ready to fight. A bunch of soldiers crash into the ground, and the others start screaming that there's no way they're losing to a tiny kid. R notices they didn't fly very far, but man, they're way weaker than he expected. They're decked out in top-tier gear and have a massive amount of mana to burn. But the mono is still looking just as awesome as before. This just proves that Arceus Viscous mana is on a whole different level. Turns out that how thick the mana is actually makes a massive difference in your total power. Our hero yells to Vargas that it'll be easy if they just take out 10 soldiers each, but the poor guy is totally freaking out. Beto is busy whining about our choices when suddenly, someone whips out a sword. That enemy general seriously thought the kid was just some weakling. He tries to catch R off guard, but the kid reacts just in time to block the hit. The guy tells the kid that his rebellion is officially over right now. The guy says it's been way too long since they last saw each other, and asks if our side is doing all right. He was just a tiny kid when they first met, so he probably doesn't remember a thing. That's Raymond, the big boss of the Fontana family who runs this entire land. Ours is totally fuming that this guy is actually the one leading the whole army. He's the guy who ordered the Valkyries' horns to be chopped off, so there's no way we're ever forgetting what he did. He's even the guy who gave our people the official rights to that land. Now this same guy, Raymond from the Fontana family, is trying to take away every single thing they have. His name was actually written right there in the tax collector's message. R wonders how he's got the nerve to steal from people who literally have nothing left. Beto yells at his brother to chill out and actually look around. That whole army is finally getting back up for round 2. Turns out Raymond only showed up to keep everyone distracted for a while. He realizes he just completely fumbled the one big opening he worked so hard to get. Every soldier points their hands right at them, getting ready to blast them with a powerful spell. Every single noble family is born with their own special kind of magic. The only reason they're even in charge is because they've got a total grip on all the magic. Even if you're the strongest person alive, you just can't win this fight all by yourself. This lets the nobles share their magic with the warriors through a process called the naming ceremony. Magic is super dangerous, so handing it out to everyone is a huge gamble. Actually, they've already been stabbed in the back before. Basically, to score some magic, you've got to survive a bunch of battles, grab some loot, and do exactly what the nobles tell you. Next up is Phase 2. He's got to start working as a knight and finally get that official stamp of approval. If you're a total flop at magic or can't hold your own in a fight, your family will strip away your name and kick you to the curb. Ars totally dodged the system back in Baruka, and now he's finally stepping up to face the music. That insane magical power the Fontana family has. Raymond screams for them to fire every single attack they've got. A bunch of sharp ice spikes come flying right at the three of them. They're totally boxed in, and there's just no way they can block every single hit coming at them at once. Vargas is dead serious now, and he's counting on his partner to help him knock those attacks away. He taps into his mana to supercharge his body and boost his strength. We need some serious power if we're gonna stop those attacks. He pumps Mona into his eyes, and suddenly the whole world is basically moving in slow motion. It's crazy hard to use mana for 2 things at once, but he's actually pulling it off. Firing off this ice should work just like flicking a bunch of pebbles. Ars realizes the only reason Vargas blocked that hit is because he's already faced these soldiers before. As stick 2, Vargas is just hammering away at the chest. One more check. Vargas is hitting the chest. Vargas is just wailing. R is totally starting to freak out. He asks the kid if he's actually doing all right. He's got a super strong body and a crazy tough sword, but he's definitely not invincible. If Vargas loses right now, he's gonna get Beto and R caught too. That's probably why this guy is ready to risk his entire life right now. Ars is super hyped about how well Vargas is doing. Beto is going absolutely ham on the enemies, letting out little screams as he fights. Earlier, Raymond was straight up ripping the horns off those Valkyries, and our side couldn't do a single thing to stop him. He's finally got the power he needs, and those soldiers are totally running out of steam. Plus, our hero isn't flying solo because he's got a ride or die squad that's always got his back. He's a completely different person now. And they're finally gonna win their freedom. Finally, the nonstop barrage just grinds to a halt. Beto tells them they totally crushed it. Beto looks back and realizes his Valkyrie is actually in bad shape. He hops off the beast, and man, he is absolutely fuming. He lunges at the enemy, demanding to know how they even managed to hurt his friend. We're all screaming for Vargas to get over there and back up Beto. The kid is crazy strong, but there's no way he can take down a whole army by himself. Beto goes totally wild and hits the enemy with every bit of his rage. He swings his sword at one of the soldiers, but the guy manages to block the hit. But even then, Beto's strength is so crazy he just shatters the soldier's weapons. Our guy is actually super impressed by that. He had no clue his brother was actually a beast, because he only ever compared him to the regular kids in their village. He knows those soldiers are total mana weaklings, but it's awesome seeing that Beto can actually handle them. His brother is blowing everyone away with that insane power while Vargas watches his back. Looks like they've got this totally under control without him. Beto's distraction worked like a charm, so now there are hardly any knights left to stop them. It's finally time for us to step up and put a stop to this. Raymond Mox is totally shocked that we're actually packing magical weapons. He's totally stunned and asks how he did that, but our guy just tells him to mind his own business while Raymond still acts like he's already won. He fires back that these little surprises aren't gonna mess with his focus at all. He was just complaining that he can't tell our side to back off anymore. Raymond's mana is way more powerful than his knights, and Ars realized he isn't the kind of leader who just shows everyone how it's done. And man, that sword of his looks straight up deadly. This thing has way more mana than the sword Ars is holding. Raymond says it's a total shame, but now it's time for the kid to leave this world for good. Valkyrie charges forward, and R is just one solid hit away from ending this whole fight. He's about to blast Raymond with every single drop of mana he's got left. R lands his hit, but he's totally shocked when Raymond's blade suddenly turns into pure ice. This guy tells the kid he's about to show him exactly what that spirit ice sword can really do. That sword keeps growing back with ice, so our weapon doesn't stand a chance. He can shatter Raymond's sword as much as he wants, but it just keeps fixing itself every single time. The guy lands a massive hit right on Valkyrie. And just like that, our guy gets caught totally off guard. Raymond just went totally wild and launched a brutal attack. The kid is totally gassed and burning through his mana, but Raymond just won't stop coming for him. Our guy slams straight into the dirt. It turns out this world is packed with some seriously overpowered fighters. Raymond starts heading straight for our guys. He's got his sword aimed right at Valkyrie, and there's totally no way for our hero to escape this. He lunges straight for Raymond, and Valkyrie is totally caught off guard when it gets hit right on the paw. Raymond's sword slips right out of his hand and crashes to the floor. He's falling right down there with Valkyrie. They're finally trading blows evenly, but that dude is staying way more chill than our hero. If he misses this shot, he's never getting another chance, and it's officially game over for everything. R swings his sword right at Raymond, but one of his own knights steps in to block the strike. The knights shout at Raymond to get moving and get out of there. He starts throwing down with them, screaming for everyone to just get out of his way. But man, their teamwork is actually insane. If he actually wants to survive those knights, he's gonna need way more power than that. Ars Nox slams one of them straight into the ground. Just like I thought, these knights are total beasts. Our guy is gasping for air, but he won't drop his sword because he's shifting his mana around to stay in the fight. It doesn't take long before every single one of them is totally wiped out, and our energy is completely tapped out. His whole body feels like it weighs a ton, but he's still not ready to quit. He can't relax just yet because Raymond is finally stepping onto the scene. They jump right into a wild sword fight. The guy says our fighter is basically running on empty. This should finally end his pathetic struggle, but R claims that Raymond is the one who actually needs to surrender right now. Out of nowhere, the whole ground starts shaking like crazy. Raymond is totally losing his mind over what's happening. R shouts that he fell right into his trap. Tryon tells everyone to listen up and says all they have to do is follow Hugh. Right then, the whole crew charges forward. This is gonna be insane because R knew a basic sneak attack just wasn't gonna cut it. He didn't have the numbers to pull it off, but he was still hiding his ultimate secret weapon. A massive squad of Valkyries starts charging right at Raymond, and he's just standing there in total shock, unable to believe his eyes. R gives the signal, and every single Valkyrie finally springs into action. Right then, they start blasting magic straight out of their horns. Suddenly, they all start blasting away at the bad guys. The soldiers are losing their minds because they can't believe those creatures are actually magical. Those round horses keep charging forward, wrecking everything in their path. Everyone's totally freaked out because these Valkyries are using the exact same magic as Baruka. Raymond is completely shook and can't believe this is actually happening. He asks Ars if he really thinks he'll just accept such a joke of a defeat. But that was exactly the reaction Ars was waiting for. He swings his blade right at Raymond. He shut the whole fight down right then and there. And just like that, it's game over for Raymond. There was no doubt about it. They totally owned that win. Ars just completely crushed the Fontana family's top fighter, demanding that the soldiers finally back off. He yells that Baruka is finally free and tells his crew to let out a massive victory roar. Ars's crew starts cheering as the enemies turn tail and run for it. The real deal Valkyrie finally shows up to have a word with Ars. He tells her he's totally fine and thanks her for worrying about him. When the dust finally settled, Baruka was the one who walked away with the win. Tryon was completely freaking out. He asks Ars if he has any idea what else totally blew his mind. He's using magic to boost his strength while charging ahead on a galloping Valkyrie. Beto and Ars are the only ones who can actually handle riding those Valkyries. The merchant asks what the boy's gonna do next, knowing the fight with the Fontana family is far from over. Our guy just wants to take a breather because he knows Fontana is packing way more firepower than they are. They rounded up every single weapon left scattered across the battlefield. Around 200 fighters switched sides to join Baruka and Linda, giving them a massive edge, but the real reason they won was all thanks to the secret info they had. Vargas is heading over because he actually wants to have a word with our crew. The kid asks if he's finally ready to talk, and Vargas gives him the nod. They've been fighting side by side since back when they were just regular people. Ars' crew actually managed to snag a few prisoners. Since they're captives now, the info they're hiding is basically a gold mine. And they're gonna need it. And honestly, they're totally worthless if they can't even take down 2 random villages. They don't actually want to throw hands, but they have to flex their power so everyone else is too scared to even try. So they decided to build a massive castle right there, because it's perfect for defense and shows everyone exactly who's boss. Science is pretty much non-existent here, probably because everyone just uses magic instead. Even with all that power, every castle they build looks way too simple. They've even got a... Gran gets totally hyped and loves the moat idea, but he points out their walls are way too weak for a real castle. To make it a legit castle wall, they had to build stairs to reach the top and a watchtower to keep a lookout. As soon as they finish that tower, they'll be able to copy everyone and keep their memories totally intact. Next up, they've got to build some roads so the villages can finally send over all those supplies. They need to build a wall in Linda and put a Valkyrie in every tower so they can keep an eye on everything. First things first, they're sorting everyone into squads based on how much magic power they've got. Grant is super hyped because he's finally about to build a massive castle. He wants to build a castle so epic that even the snobby royals will be totally blown away. The work is finally finished, and this tower is now a massive 30 meters tall. Right outside the wall, there's a massive moat circling the whole place. They even set up massive walls and tall watchtowers to protect the village of Linda. Plus, there's a main road that links all the villages together. First, they had to handle everything happening outside the castle walls. Beto says the squad is blowing up because the new road makes it super easy to get from the castle to the villages in just one day. Beto's actually got a message for our crew too. Father Paulo is actually asking to see him. R finally makes his way back to Baruka after being gone for a long time. The last thing he wanted was to run into that priest. The guy walks up to the kid and tells him he's noticed he's been getting into all kinds of stuff lately. While he's gone, Ars is left wondering what the heck the priest is even talking about. The guy says the kid is totally stressing him out and asks if the priest is talking about the naming ceremony. Paulo admits he's been naming people behind the church's back, but now he's in way too deep and needs to find out what this naming magic is actually doing. To use magic, you've got to tap into your own mana, and the rare people who can actually do it are called mages. Legend says that way back in the day, a mage figured out how to use his powers just by speaking. This word-based magic became known as a spell, and the people who use these. Then you have the geniuses who invented naming, letting even regular people use magic, and they're known as the wizards. The wizard claimed that his naming power was actually a special gift straight from the gods. This is the main rule of the holy church Paulo belongs to. But this wizard was actually planning something way different. He pushed his magic far away from the church's light, sticking to super basic spells that wouldn't hurt a fly. Naming someone basically turns you into their magic parent, letting the kids use all your cool spells while you get to siphon off a little bit of their mana in return. Arya starts to wonder if that's the real reason her mana has been spiking like crazy. Paulo reveals that R used a secret move without permission, and the kid is smart enough to know the church is totally gonna flip out. Our guy starts freaking out, thinking it's officially game over for him. He screams for Paulo to wait up, explaining that the ceremony he just performed actually turned them all into official knights. He's clearly not acting alone, and since other people are in on it too, maybe Paulo will actually cut him some slack. The priest explains that the church is always the one running the show for every noble's naming ceremony. These nobles can only control their mana with the church's help, because without them, they'd just go totally wild and wreck everything in sight. These nobles are getting way more soldiers and powers plus insane amounts of mana, but all that strength is a total disaster if they don't use it right. The church isn't about to let their money walk away. and Ars is absolutely fuming that Paolo is making bank off this. Paolo claims they aren't taking money. They're just accepting gifts that God sent as a way to say thanks. This is how the church keeps everyone in line, so we're not just picking a fight with them, we're actually hitting their wallets too. R realizes that Mona actually flows from the kids straight to their dad, and it goes even deeper, because those fathers have their own dads too. Ars asks Paolo if his mana is finally starting to level up. The guy says yes because he's the one who actually gave Ars his name. Paolo figured it was just Ars's insane mana quality, but he knows that doesn't explain everything. Our main guy actually gave a Valkyrie her own name one time, but from that point on, every single kid born could use his magic too. This proves every single Valkyrie is actually linked to them. Basically, he's acting like a bridge, funneling the Valkyrie's mana straight to Father Paolo. The kid starts wondering if this whole thing is just a giant pyramid scheme. Paolo says his mana leveled up so much he's now a bishop, ruling over the church and the entire region. Bishops are on a whole different level than priests, so Paolo is living his best life. But Ars is wondering who actually gave him that promotion. And the guy just looks at him and says, nobody. Out of nowhere, he unlocked a sick new spell and realized he'd finally leveled up. Now he can finally use healing magic. R realizes this is exactly like those guys he mentioned who are totally locked out of certain spells. Most people can't use these spells because they don't even know they're real. But if your mana is high enough, the knowledge just clicks in your head. He felt like God himself was the one who handed him that insane power. Paolo says he's finally about to reach the exact spot he's been aiming for. Why didn't the boy just trust him with his whole future? They've got to see exactly what's going down with us right now. He led a massive farmer revolt, raided the next village, took out the Fontana family's rep, snatched up 6 knights, and now he's straight up stealing land. R calls out Paolo, saying he's doing nothing but shady stuff. The bishop then reveals he swiped the church's secret during the naming ceremony, and is now spreading some super dangerous magic everywhere. R just declared war on the Fontana family, but he's got absolutely no excuse for what went down at the naming ceremony. The kid asks if joining the church would fix everything, but Paolo tells him he's already blown his chance since he used his magic to attack someone. Our guy asks if the priest is out of moves, but Paolo says his biggest mess right now is the massive beef with the church. Paolo's got to figure out exactly what he's going to say to them next. He straight up admits that he's the one who came up with the name for Baruka village. That way, ours wouldn't have gone over his head, and they could have just kept on working. Our main guy asks why the priest would do something so crazy, and Paolo says he's about to break down what it actually means. He only got promoted because of Ars's mana, so he's basically finished if the kid dies. Ars used the naming ceremony to level up his power, and he's trying to keep it totally low-key. Paolo is totally down to back us up with everything he's got. They're even making up lies about what's actually going down at the church. They can't just look the other way anymore because everyone knows what he did, and he's gonna have to face the music real soon. But in a mess like this, who's actually gonna be the one to pay them back? The kid realizes that nobody is coming to save him. Nobles always expect a fat tip for naming things, and since Bishop Paolo isn't working for free, our guy asks exactly how much he's gonna have to pay. Paolo crunches the numbers and shows him the total, and the kid's jaw drops because that's literally every cent he's saved his entire life. The guy asks if the kid can actually pay up, because that's a crazy amount of money that nobody else could ever afford. Ars isn't about to blow his whole life savings on some church drama, especially since he knows he can't trust a single soul. So, does he really need Paolo to cut a deal with the Fontana family? The guy nods, agreeing they definitely still have to handle them. Paolo tells him to think like a Fontana, and figure out what their main goal is right now. The kid asks if it's gonna be him, but Paolo tells him he clearly doesn't get what's going on yet. Everyone's wondering where Baraka and his crew got those insane powers, because hardly anyone can pull off magic that smoothly. And it's even rarer to find someone who can actually pass that power on to someone else. They'll probably just think some other noble family started the whole riot by giving the farmers money and power. Paolo's gonna tell everyone that this noble doesn't even exist. He's gonna tell everyone the citizens made the call themselves, and that he's the one who picked the Baruka farmers. He's asking if this is way too dangerous and what his actual plan is. Paolo says that's more than enough of a brutal welcome to the world of performing arts. Plus, after his big promotion, he's now the bishop in charge of every single church in the Fontana territory. So he's probably got the Fontana family totally under control. He's got to build his rep from the ground up, but there's no way he can pull it off without our cash. The kid realizes that money runs the whole world, and tells the priest that Baruka's life is now totally in his hands. Back in the city, things were starting to get wild. Everyone's talking about how Paolo just became the new bishop. He's the guy running the whole Baruka church, and he's the one who picked our leader too. The kid says he never thought a bishop would actually step up to cover for him. RS is clearly a massive deal if even the church is willing to risk everything for him. Ars is busy getting his squad in order when someone suddenly calls out to him. The bishop rolls up in his cart looking totally stressed out, even though he did everything he was supposed to with the Fontana family. Just like they thought, both of them have to be there in person to lock this deal down. Now they've got to head straight for the palace just like they planned. They're just gonna have a chill talk in a spot that's safe for both sides. To pull this off, Ars picked a tower right in the middle of the road where absolutely no one was around. He races up every single step and finally swings the door wide open.
The other guy shouts that he belongs to them now.
He's actually pretty impressed that he's up against a literal child. Our MC is absolutely fuming because this guy won't stop making fun of him, and demands to know who this guy actually is. He stands up and tells everyone his name is Carlos Fontana. Right now, he's the one calling all the shots for the Fontana family. Our guy is totally fuming that Paulo kept him in the dark, but Carlos Fontana says the bishop already spilled the beans on everything. He wants to just ignore the rebellion and stop the war, but Ars isn't about to let him off that easy. He tells them he's got a few demands of his own. Carlos Fontana cracks a huge grin. He won't even bow to a noble, and now he's straight up making demands. Carlos slides a paper over and says that's exactly how a rebel leader should act, officially offering us his terms. Ars grabs the contract to see what he's dealing with. Carlos Fontana says he's totally fine with giving up Baruco if it means this fight finally ends. The contract says he has to serve the Fontana family, but he gets to be a knight in return, which is honestly a pretty sweet deal. The kid's wondering if Carlos Fontana is actually going to keep his word. He says they still have to figure out the small stuff, but it's official, and if he really did something that evil, his own guys would have totally ditched him. R wonders if Carlos knows he's the one who killed his rep, and if he thinks it's totally weird that Carlos still wants him to join his crew. Carlos Fontana speaks up and says he's actually super grateful for how things are going down. He starts cracking up and says our guy did an awesome job taking Raymond out. Our guy probably knows exactly what he's talking about. He was just a kid, but the nightmare of war is something you can never really shake off. 3 years ago, his dad died and he had to step up as the new boss of the family. With the throne up for grabs, everyone is going all out, and most of them are totally down to kill the chief. Carlos Fontana was named Lord while he was still just a kid, so a knight from the Barbaros family stepped up to rule until he was old enough to take over. He gives Raymond props for keeping him safe until he grew up, but while he was in charge, he watched one of the family's best soldiers die. That representative spot usually goes to the fancy noble knights, but he just went ahead and snatched it for himself. Raymond was the one behind the Valkyrie's gift that the Ars delivered. This proves he was the guy who actually set up all the Fontana family's contracts. Carlos agrees, saying that tiny slip-up was the perfect chance to take him out, while the MC realizes Raymond also messed up big time by handing that land over to the kid. Carlos Fontana admits he never expected us to actually take out Raymond. But now that he's gone, Carlos is officially running the whole Fontana family. But the kid says it's way harder than it looks, so he's grinding to bring all the different powers in Fontana together now that Raymond is finally out of the picture.
Carlos Fontana points his finger straight at Ars.
He points out that Raymond's family and crew are living a quiet life, but even though they're playing nice now, they're definitely going to rebel sooner or later. Our squad is the one that's finally going to shut this down for good. Carlos Fontana might be the head of his family, but he's got zero backup, so his only hope is using the Baruca family's power to take this guy down. Ars faced Carlos Fontana as a total equal with zero fear, making it clear he's got way more than just a farmer's mindset. R has something he's desperate to protect, so he's definitely not backing down, and now Carlos Fontana has to offer him a deal he can't refuse. The lives of the Baruca people and the strength the boy finally managed to build up. He's finally going to be free, and Carlos Fontana is doing whatever it takes to make that happen. In return, we've got to be his personal sword. His spot is super shaky, but he's still a lord, and our leader is just glad Carlos Fontana isn't replacing him. He's totally down to accept just to keep things cool between him and Paulo. Then the kid says he's got some rules of his own, and their meeting drags on until it's pitch black outside. The priest drops a paper onto the table, and it's the exact deal they just bargained for. Paulo asks if they're both down, and Carlos Fontana and R give him the green light. Paulo calls them out and tells them to step forward. He asks if the kid promises to serve and back up Carlos Fontana, and the MC says he's all in. Then the priest called Carlos Fontana to step up to the front. He asks the guy to promise they'll have each other's backs tonight, and he says it's a deal. That's when Ars drops to one knee before Carlos Fontana to officially get his new position.
Right then, the priest unleashes his power.
Carlos Fontana looks at Ars Baruca and tells him he's officially his knight now. From that moment on, everyone knows him as Ars von Baruca. After making a deal with this guy, Carlos Fontana is way more powerful and ready to rule his turf while putting the heat on Raimo's crew. He just scored some awesome new powers, like being able to freeze everything in his path. Now he can finally unleash the Fontana family's insane magic. With all that craziness finally over, our guy can finally get back to his totally normal, boring life. Grant asks the kid if he's ever gonna actually do something with his own land. This kid wasn't just handling Baruka and Linda, he was actually running the entire castle north of the river. Carlos really just wanted to handle Baruka, but after a massive argument about leaving Vargas and the castle behind, he finally caved. Ars tells Grant he's got a job for him, and it's the most important thing they need to handle right now. He says he's gotta go grind for some cash because he's got nothing to make the guy's wild fantasies come true. He's got the power to rule and collect taxes, but there's a catch. He has to hand over a cut of that money to the Fontana family. If they demand it, he has to hand it over, but right now, our guy is so broke he can't even afford food for his people. Ars isn't about to turn his back on the land he fought so hard to take over, so now he's gotta come up with a plan to get rich fast. So he starts setting up a crew to run the whole show. She snaps her book shut, looking totally heartbroken. The maid speaks up and asks what the heck is going on with Lilina. She just flashes a smile and says it's no big deal. Then she tells the maid to go grab the next book she's gonna read. Raymond had been guarding his land ever since she was a little kid, but he ended up losing his life when a rebellion broke out. He's always been super talented, and she's totally sure Carlos Fontana is gonna run his territory like a boss. Raymond's powerhouse knights are on the hunt for the culprit, and they definitely don't trust a total rookie like Carlos Fontana. He's a total genius, but he still needs to learn how to play the political game. She knows she's got to get her act together for what's about to go down. Ars steps up and says he's finally going to reveal the people who will be running the Baruka kingdom. Traian Baruka is a merchant who's going to handle the business side of things since he's a total pro at reading and math. Beto and Vargas are stepping up as captains, and since they need way more cash for a real army, they're starting by training the people they've already got. Ars' dad is taking over security and setting up some basic rules to keep everyone safe and peaceful. Now our guy can get his dad to keep those magic users in check while things are peaceful. Matic and the leaders from those two joined villages are the ones who'll decide his fate. There aren't any real rules in that place, but everyone still does exactly what they say. He wants those three to be the ones calling the shots and making the big decisions in his name. Grandmus is still busy building, but he's a total disaster at staying organized, so our guy needs to find someone to keep him in check. Meanwhile, our guy starts hiring performers to keep the rest of the crowd entertained. While building the castle roads, the workers didn't just follow his lead. They actually came up with way better ideas than his original plan. Even if they can't read, these guys are still total geniuses. This kid is gonna push them harder than ever to serve the kingdom of Baruka. And just like that, the new era of ruling Baruka finally kicked off. The merchant starts whining, claiming that Ars is a straight-up monster. The very first thing the kid did was grab every single cent of his precious cash. He was totally broke after paying the church, so he hit up Traian for an investment, leaving Bishop Paulo completely stunned that he'd managed to save that much cash. If these two team up, they're gonna make everyone else run for their lives. Ars tells Traian to just see that cash as payment for the awesome land he scored, and Traian totally agrees it's a perfect donation for his leader. He can tell the kid has serious skills, but he's worried if he'll actually survive going from a regular nobody to a high-class noble overnight. Ar and Carlos Fontana are officially partners now, but the other nobles and Carlos's own men absolutely hate his guts. The kid was basically just a pawn they could throw away in the middle of the war, and everyone was telling Carlos Fontana he needed to go take his land back. Just making his land successful isn't gonna cut it. He's gotta turn the kingdom of Baruka into the strongest power in the whole area. To kick things off, he needs to make some big deals and stack up his cash, so he orders them to open the market right now. Go ahead and complain, because seriously, nobody in their right mind would travel that far just to buy a few things. These rich nobles are always making deals with their neighbors, so they're basically stuck and can't go anywhere else. Every border has a price tag if you want to cross, and the guilds are a huge pain to deal with too. These guilds are totally ripping everyone off, charging massive fees for what you sell and even where you set up your shop. If you try to pull off a job without the guild, you're going straight to jail. Ars asks if this is going to stop the money from moving and totally wreck the market. He tells them they should open up a free market where anyone can walk in and start making deals. The merchant says it's still a total struggle because they have to pay fees every single time they cross into a new territory. But he's still determined to build a city where merchants can finally call the shots. First, he needs a direct path to the city of Fontana, so he takes his basic bridge and levels it up into a full-blown road. Building that bridge was already part of the deal from the very beginning.
This way, they're taking out 2 targets with just 1 move.
Beto's suspicious and asks if the peace treaty actually said anything about building that road for the merchants. The kid reveals that the whole plan was actually meant for the armies from the start. That way, if they feel like they're in danger, they can get to Baruka right away. The boy says the next rule is that the soldiers have to stay on the other side of the river. Trying to get that castle north of the river from Carlos Fontana was a total nightmare, but he finally caved. But for real, he definitely didn't want to end up on Carlos Fontana's bad side. He's turning that castle north of the river into a brand new city to link Fontana and Baruca together. Ours told the farmers to use magic to level up their land, while everyone else got to work building brand new roads. Just a few days later, this road was already making the trip between Baruca and Fontana way faster than before. Once they wrap things up, Ars thanks the whole group and tells them they did an awesome job. With the roads finally finished, everyone is starting to freak out about how they're actually going to make money. They've got 0 farms and honestly they have no idea how to even start. Ar realizes that a lord's main job is keeping his people fed, because when everyone has enough to eat, they don't feel the need to turn to crime. Plus, it's actually a lord's job to step in and keep the peace. Ar builds a massive housing complex in Baruca village, and everyone's jaw drops when he tells them that literally anyone is welcome to live there. Ars cleared out some land past the wall and built a bunch of little houses. He tells them he's already got jobs lined up so they can start making their own cash, and there are only 2 things they need to do. First, they're making these insanely tough bricks. Baruch is going to be the absolute pro at making those insanely tough bricks. Next up, these crazy magic mushrooms are sprouting up everywhere. The absolute most important thing he needs to do is find a source of mana. If they play it smart, they'll score a massive haul and have enough mushrooms to last them forever. Everyone is totally losing their minds over what our side can actually do. At first, R wanted to keep the magic mushroom a total secret, figuring he'd lose some cash now to win way bigger later on. They've got to do everything they can to make sure they actually survive this war. If he stacks up enough mana, he can go totally wild with his magic without even breaking a sweat. And just like that, Baruca finally got its hands on those famous specialties. Now our guy has to strike a deal with the farmers. First things first, they've got to scope out the land. Beto is totally lost, so the boy breaks it down and says they just need to see how big the land is and how much food they can actually grow. Beto passes on the idea because he'd rather focus on training his little soldiers, and Ars totally agrees that it's just not his vibe. Since they flattened the land and fixed it up, this year's harvest is going to be absolutely massive. This means he's about to rake in a massive pile of tax money. The whole point of this survey is to see how much the land actually grows, so he can figure out exactly how much tax money he's gonna get. But if he jacks up taxes in his very first year, everyone's gonna think he's a total villain. Arce is scratching his head trying to figure out how to measure the area since these people don't have any tools for it. So he figures it out by counting exactly how many times that land leveling power was used. Both his leveling and soil powers only work in 10-meter squares at a time. Now anyone can pull off a full analysis even without any fancy gear. R says he's down for the plan, counting every single acre of Baruca's land as one soil leveling. Earlier, while they were battling Raymond, Carl jumped up in tears and started screaming that everything was his fault. He owned up to it all, saying the Valkyrie getting hurt and the boy's situation were totally his fault. But he and his mom kept making sure he knew that things weren't actually like that. Ever since then, the kid's been working his heart out to show everyone he's actually useful. R says they also need to figure out a standard way to measure length. He decides to use the side of the leveled ground as a meter, and says if you split it into 100 tiny pieces, you get centimeters. With length finally figured out, measuring volume and height is a total breeze, letting them prove that a liter of water weighs a kilogram and evaporates at exactly 100 degrees. R knew nobody would get it right away, so he had some notes ready and told Carl to pass them out to the whole group. Ars asks Carl if he actually caught everything he just said. He looks at the little guy and tells him he's really counting on him. And that's how the Baruca community started measuring things exactly the way we do. They started scouting the land using their teacher's lessons, but the poor guy didn't even have any paper to write on. They seriously need some paper to keep track of every single thing they're discovering. But paper is super expensive, and they're way too broke to be wasting money on it right now. He remembers the forest is packed with trees, and that's exactly what he needs to make paper. So he actually tried to use magic to make his own paper. He still messed up a ton, even telling everyone that making paper straight from a plant was basically impossible. But our guy isn't quitting just because he messed up a few times, so he cranks up the heat and throws in new ingredients to try a whole new batch. He's crafting this paper by mixing together forest wood, healing mana, and some roots. First, they gotta smash that wood into a pulp, and then they just boil the whole thing up. He figured out that boiling it in mana potion is the secret to getting those fibers out way better. Then they just toss the fibers into the pulp and get the whole thing boiling again. We're gonna use those forest yams to make the pulp for ours. Next, they grab the mixture and sandwich it between some cloths with a heavy weight on top to squeeze out all the water and dry the paper out. So now he's basically holding a super important piece of paper. Bars can actually write super well on that sheet. Finally, we can actually start keeping track of everything happening in that land. Tryon is totally stunned and tells the kid he's gotta buy those papers right now. Our hero starts clowning him, asking if he wasn't the same guy who said this was impossible, and tells him he better start apologizing. He admits he never thought the kid could pull off something that insane. R asks if he's gonna use it or sell it, and the guy straight up says he's doing both. This thin paper is actually perfect for keeping records and selling, and even though it's super slim, it's way better for writing than anything else he's ever found. This merchant is dead certain that this thing is gonna sell like crazy everywhere. R says if he's really going all in, they need to crank up paper production and get a whole squad dedicated to it. It's a total gut punch that all he can give these families is money, and they won't even look him in the eye. Forget the farms and windows, making paper is way more useful for us right now. And just like that, they opened a workshop and started making tons of paper for everyone. Ours actually preferred to recruit widows for his team of elite specialists. This paper is packed with mana, and even though it costs a ton, it's flying off the shelves in every city. But even then, the widows still refuse to look them in the eye. But now the whole family is honestly just super thankful. A little kid who lost his dad looks over and signs to our hero, who finally managed to lift the heavy burden off these families after they lost their providers.
R says the next big move is getting the Valkyries geared up and ready for action.
Gran gets super pumped about the idea and is dying to start making some awesome new gear. The armor looks sick, but our guy wants to make saddles and stirrups, so he has Grant sketch out a plan. The guy asks if they can even ride without that gear, and the kid tells him they totally can. But man, that horse fight with Raymond really showed him why having a saddle is a total must. He lost the fight and got tossed straight off the Valkyrie. If he just had a saddle with stirrups, he'd finally have a solid place to plant his feet. If he just used his body strengthening, he totally would have crushed that fight. Saddles are actually super easy to make, so he and Beto should be able to handle it no problem. Grand Asif is looking to build his very own squad of elite horse riders. In a real fight, being fast is honestly the ultimate weapon. Adding a cavalry unit is definitely going to give their army a massive boost. The Valkyries with horns can totally fight on their own, but the ones without horns are basically just battle horses for the team. The kid says he wants something that'll make it way easier for the Valkyries to reach the other city. Grant steps up and says he's totally down to handle it. They finally finished making the horseshoes. Valkyries are way faster in the woods than on the road because they're hauling around tons of people, so they need super tough shoes to handle all that extra weight. R thinks the horseshoe looks awesome, and Valkyrie is totally hyped about it too. After a while, our guys started picking up on some weird details about those creatures. The Valkyries he creates are totally different from the ones that hatch from eggs laid by other Valkyries. One of them is way bigger, but their horns and magic power are exactly the same. This proves that by making just one type of horseshoe, they can get every single horse ready for action. Our guy literally tried out every single type of horseshoe he could find, until Valkyrie was finally satisfied and had a huge smile on her face. After trying a bunch of times, they finally scored the perfect gear to take down that beast. R looks at the massive mountain of work left, and he's already totally wiped out. Back in our old life, we had tons of different foods to eat all year long, but in this world, you can only get a meal during harvest time. R realizes that even fixing the soil won't help because Baruka has a warehouse but just lets all the roots sit there and rot. But that's all about to end on that very day. Now that they've got that warehouse, they can finally stash away enough food to last them for ages. Beto jokes that the cube looks like a giant block of tofu, but R gets totally triggered and snaps back that it's actually a special fortress with walls 3 times thicker than normal. It's pitch black and there's literally zero air to breathe. Ars finally starts letting his magic loose. He starts blasting ice balls in every direction, and Beta asks if he's actually doing okay. Grant asks if the kid needs a breather, but Ars says they need a ton of ice and tells the other two to help him fill the whole space.
Then they actually pull it off and cover the whole warehouse in ice.
Next, they've got to cover the ice in sawdust so it doesn't melt away. Right then, they've got themselves a total freezer. Beto starts complaining about the freezing cold, remembering how people used to use ice boxes as freezers before electricity was even a thing. Honestly, doing that for families might actually be a pretty solid move. If you aren't strong enough to make your own ice, you can just buy it to keep your veggies and leftover meat fresh.
This is definitely gonna turn things around for them.
Grant asks Beto why they don't just build a castle right there, but the kid is totally confused. The guy mentions that R spends all his time in Baruka instead of that castle north of the river. And the kid says he's actually having a blast working like this. Carlos Fontana is stuck in that castle with the absolute minimum amount of guards allowed by the treaty, and Grant is seriously wondering why they haven't just built another fortress there yet. Huge castles are the ultimate way to flex your power, and while the boy agrees, he's pretty sure Grant is just looking for an excuse to build something else. R knows they just barely survived a nightmare, and even though building a castle might stir up more drama, it's the best way to help him settle into his new role as governor. After that last fight, Everyone finally saw just how strong we really are. But for everyone who wasn't there, they have absolutely no clue what's going on. Nobody wants to pay taxes to a literal kid, so Grant suggests he flexes his powers to show everyone who's really in charge. The guy agrees and says Castle is gonna look way more decked out than the other one. We've got plenty of time, so we're just taking it slow. And even though that castle north of the river is the coolest spot in Baruka, Grant says the kid is never actually there. Building a giant castle there is the perfect way to show everyone who's actually running the show in Baruka. R is dead set on getting the market open, but he's still nervous that the merchants won't actually show up. He could be thrown into a fight at any second, so instead of just ruling a country, he needs to focus on getting way stronger. He needs people to move into the kingdom, so Ars tells Graham that just building a castle isn't going to be enough. He's building the heart of Baruka and putting a massive castle right in the middle. He decided to build a city right around the castle, realizing those giant walls were already doing a great job of keeping everyone else out. If he builds a city with no walls in a spot everyone loves, a ton of new people are definitely going to show up. Once more people move in, shops will start popping up everywhere, and this city is going to be the ultimate spot to make some serious cash. Everyone's ready to throw down by his side to protect their homes and gear, and now that he's the Lord, bringing in more people is a total win for him. Take the villages of Baruka and Linda, add in that castle to the north, and boom, you've got the Baruka kingdom. First up, they've got to fix up all the land sitting between the main wall and the outer wall. Down in the south, where Beto and Grand live and Traian has his shop, they're opening a huge free market for everyone to sell their gear, and that's where the freezer is too. But even after all that, there's still a ton of empty space left. Our crew is splitting up the rest of the land in the south and west to sell it off to anyone looking for a home, and once they slap on some doors and windows, these places. The north is right next to the forest, unlike the south, making it the perfect spot for lumberjacks and charcoal workers to set up shop. They need those trees to make paper and magic mushrooms, so they're staying right where they are. Up in the north, they've split the land into huge farms just to grow food for the Valkyries. He's actually planning to hand over this whole territory to every single soldier in his army. He's not quite ready for an army yet, but leaving that gate open means his people can just charge through the moment things kick off. Right now, he's just keeping the peace, but he's thinking it might be a good idea to build a prison to lock up anyone he needs to keep under control. They definitely need a court to handle criminals, so Eris is thinking about judging the major crimes at the castle while letting the townspeople deal with the small stuff. He decides to build these insanely tough brick walls right between the two main ones. Eris just kept on expanding the land, putting all her energy into building that new city down south. The merchant is totally blown away by what he sees and says, "It's honestly mind-blowing, and he's never seen a city this wild in his entire life." Aris swore he gave it everything he had to make it work, and now the boy is starting to think this place might even be bigger than Fontana. The whole city is split into these organized lodges with rows of regular houses everywhere. The way they split the south and east roads was totally genius, and the buildings even have these cool arches and glass windows. The kid built the whole place with these insane high-grade bricks, and Eris realizes he only used his memory magic on his own house to pull it off. Eris asks if people from other cities will be shocked, and Trion tells him that literally anyone would be blown away by it. The guy is totally freaking out and begs Eris to help him get back down to the ground. The kid needs to beef up his outer wall because even though it can tank a hit from a giant boar, it's not ready to stop human attackers yet. He wants to build the whole thing out of super strong bricks, but he can't cast it all in one spell, making the work way too slow. The North Castle got by with just 4 towers, but looking at how massive this wall is, that's definitely not going to be enough.
Aris is dropping a tower every 200 meters as he moves along.
Ares built those massive towers by using the memory-storing power he took from the castle up north. He leaves Beto and Vargas to hold down the top of the wall, sticking to the same plan he used at the other castle. Aris told Gran they seriously needed to level up their defense. And honestly, the guy totally crushed it. Now, if a fight breaks out right by the wall, they just chuck these super tough bricks at the enemies since mana is a total nightmare to store. From way up there, it's super easy to just chuck bricks and wreck everything below. Ares is determined to find some real weapons to beef up their defense, but for now, these bricks are gonna have to work. He chugs another potion to get his magic back while figuring out his next move.
They're also gonna dig a massive 10-meter deep moat all around the wall.
They couldn't fill it with water like that castle up north, so Aris just made the whole thing way wider instead.
They've got 4 main gates on the wall that actually work like drawbridges.
These lumberjacks are total pros, so they're gonna finish this super fast. Matic realizes that controlling the entrance is a genius move for defense, since they can just raise the door to keep the whole kingdom safe. Plus, there are tons of people ready to blast away at the bad guys. And just like that, the massive fortress city of Barakania was born. Tryon tells Eris they're running out of glass and asks if they can even make more. The kid is totally losing it and asks if even his glass stash is empty, while the man points out that every single building here needs glass to be built. On top of that, the merchants are actually ditching the bricks and buying up all the glass instead. The kid asks why he's suddenly interested in buying when he wasn't before, and Try just says it's because he's the one who built this entire city. Once they saw glass actually being used to build stuff, they realized it was a total game changer, and now his city is the blueprint for everyone else. Eris is totally kicking himself, saying he should have just sold him off for a ton of money when he had the chance. Try says the kid needs to stock up fast because this glass business is about to blow up. Hearing that from a merchant, the kid realizes he's got to start making these things in bulk. So if that's the deal, he should probably just turn making ice into a legit spell. Grant finally catches up with Eris, but they're both totally wiped out. He claims he's a real builder who hates using magic to mass-produce stuff, but the kid thinks these super strong bricks are actually a total game changer. Grant says bricks and glass are totally different, so using magic to make those bricks actually makes sense since they're using the right materials. And you can use those bricks to build pretty much anything you can think of. But glass, that's a whole different story. Eris doesn't just stop at windows. She uses glass to craft cups, plates, and all sorts of other stuff. If he turns that into a spell, he's basically stuck making just one single thing. That's totally gonna kill their imagination and stop any cool new stuff from being made. He realizes sand and coal are super easy to find for making glass, so he thinks it'd be a total waste to stop creating new things now. Eris challenges Grant to whip up something totally new with the glass, so he asks if she's actually got a plan in mind. Mac hit him up and asked him to make some lenses. He wants to see if Grant is actually the real deal, and he's getting seriously hyped for it. Even though this request is totally random, Grant is actually having a blast. Eris finally catches a break and chills out with a cup of tea. It's been way too long since he actually got to chill out and enjoy a quiet cup of tea. Hector asks if the inner walls are coming up next, and the kid tells him they definitely are. It's supposed to be this massive symbol of power, but Eris honestly has no clue what he's going to do with it yet. Suddenly, he catches the sound of two guys having a massive blowout right outside. Eris recognizes those voices and heads straight over to see what's up. Beto and Vargas are busy talking things out. Beto explains they're figuring out what to do if war breaks out again, but Vargas is totally obsessed with just playing defense. Vargas tells Eris to let Beto know that it's a total waste of time to go after people who aren't even ready yet. The kid catches them right in the middle of planning their next big move. This debate is actually a huge deal, so the guy tells everyone to chill out and just talk it through. Eris says sorry for bugging him, but Hector is totally chill and doesn't seem to mind at all. Beto is just chilling at the table, casually sipping on some tea. He says you've gotta attack if you want to win, but Vargas thinks they should just use their castle-building powers to play it safe and defend. Eris finally gets why Beto is so obsessed with attacking, especially since it all started with that first big fight against the Fontana family. The whole battlefield felt super dark and creepy as people were getting wiped out everywhere. Even the MC was totally freaked out, so he just rushed in without a plan, and honestly, it looks like Beto did the same exact thing. They totally wrecked a massive group of trained soldiers, and Beto probably thinks they won just because they made the first move and never stopped fighting. Seriously, that was a total genius move for them. Beto is definitely strong, but he's still just a rookie kid, and Eris doesn't feel like they actually won. They just kept rushing the guy, but he's not making that mistake again because he knows he's totally outmatched. Vargas has this super weird plan to just hide in the castles and focus on defense, but Eris thinks playing it safe like that is actually a huge mistake. Let's be real, he's just a regular guy who's never been in a real fight before. They can build all the forts and walls they want, but absolutely nobody is coming to save them. Carlos Fontana's spot is super shaky, and he could totally bail on Eris at any second. These guys aren't really experts with any specific kind of gun. The other knights are out for blood and could strike at any second, so they've got to use every bit of their own power just to survive. Every fighter there has to adapt on the fly to do their best and keep everyone alive. Every single person there has to be just as strong and smart as the captain himself. Beta and Vargas are totally lost because Eris is just giving them the silent treatment. That's totally wild and a super tough call, but they've got to make a choice right now. Finally, he sees exactly what the Baruka army is missing. But here's the real problem. How are they even going to get their hands on it? He's doing everything he can to make the city rich, but he knows he can't stop leveling up his army either. Hector asks if Eris wants to take over lands and get more power, but the boy straight up says no. Our main guy makes it clear he's only fighting to protect his turf and his spot at the top. Eris is totally haunted by his past life, making him way too scared to fight because he just wants everyone to stay alive and live in peace. The kid says he just wants to chill on the farm and eat good food, and Hector is totally down with that answer. But our guy knows he can't just play nice in a world this crazy, so he kicks off some serious training and orders everyone to start blasting while riding their Valkyries. The brutal training to stay alive on the battlefield has finally kicked off. First, they had to practice riding the Valkyries, and the new saddle and harness made it way easier. Everyone has to use their super strength just to stay on their horses, and even though the muscle pain is straight up brutal, they can just meditate it away later. Anyone who mastered the ride is moving straight to the next level. This is all about blasting magic while you're charging on a horse. Seriously, fighting on horseback is way harder than it looks and takes a ton of practice to master. They start off just spamming pebbles until they evolve, and then they totally master throwing ice. Their biggest edge is that they've got a massive army of Valkyries on their side. And that's exactly why our guy chose this way of fighting. He's busy whipping a whole squad of magic soldiers into shape. Someone who can ride and blast the target at the exact same time. This lets you stay far away from the enemy while you're still hitting them. With that plan, they actually managed to take down a massive monster boar. R realizes that spamming a non-stop barrage of ice is definitely enough to take down even the toughest monster. Training against that beast went way better than expected. The Valkyrie from Ars is leading the whole fleet solo, so even the worst riders are staying perfectly in formation. They're basically like a school of fish, and with a solid leader, they all move together as one. And just like that, he officially started building Baruka's insane magic cavalry. Grant is totally hyped because he finally pulled it off. He pulled some kind of crazy move with those glass lenses. The kid asks if he's finally done and if he skipped sleep yet again. Grant claims he's totally fine because he can meditate, but since that magic only works while you're sleeping, it didn't actually help him at all. But who knows if it's still this chill when someone is wide awake. Ars tells them to head straight to the top of the tower to put it to the test. These binoculars use a bunch of lenses to zoom in and see things from crazy far away. R barely understands how this works, so there's no way he can copy it with his magic. But still, you can see every single thing from way up there. R even spots his mom out there, just hanging up the laundry. The kid tells Grant he did an awesome job. The guy tells him straight up that he never does anything halfway. Our main guy is seriously hyped that Grant is heading back to Baruka again. Suddenly, Carl pops up all hyped and tells everyone that it's finally snowing. He agrees and says since it's gonna be freezing out, they should definitely grab some hot drinks. Ars totally gave up on the idea of getting any rest, but the year actually finished without Carl making any crazy demands. They were called out a bunch of times, but the Baruka army never actually got to jump into the fight. There's this massive fancy road and a giant fortress that's way bigger than the enemy's base. They can build these insane paths that lead straight to the rebels' secret hideouts. They can even pop up 10-meter-high forts right in the perfect spots. When the enemies saw the army inside the fortress growing bigger every single day, most of them just gave up and surrendered. Sure, there were always a few exceptions, but Carlos Fontana was the guy who handled those troops. Because of the roads they built, Fontana's whole layout gets a massive upgrade every single time they're summoned. Ars even hit up Carlos Fontana to ditch the tolls, since letting people move around freely would actually bring in way more profit. Carlos Fontana glared at us like he was totally fed up with the boys and their non-stop demands. Because of that, Fontana is doing way better and is totally thriving now. Winter finally hit, and now all the supplies and orders have completely ground to a halt. The snow is piling up so high that they're basically just hiding out and sleeping like bears. Our guy is complaining that it's absolutely freezing. He starts whining about how he just wants to soak in a hot bath and warm up. The little brother says it's gonna warm us up, but honestly that's a super weird thing to ask for. He's been so busy building up the city that he totally forgot how amazing a hot bath feels. But man, running this whole territory is seriously exhausting. The Valkyrie starts knocking on the window, calling out for the kid. Ars steps outside and asks what that thing even is. He's dying to find out what the Valkyrie is actually after. They finally arrive at what looks like a steaming hot spring. Valkyrie actually found that right as they were heading home from the war with Fontana. She brought him right here just because she heard him complaining about the cold. His Valkyrie is a total genius, so the kid just dips his feet in the water because jumping all the way in would leave him freezing cold the second he gets out. He starts freaking out because if there's a hot spring here, people are definitely gonna show up.
R snatches the Valkyrie and bolts straight for the city.
He tells Vargas he wants to snag a piece of that empty land from the village next door. The guy asks why he's in such a rush and says he can use it, but he really wants to know what R is planning first. He's planning to take that hot river water and send it straight to Linda's village. He's sure a hot bath inn will bring in tons of visitors, so Vargas promises to share the big idea with the village. If you set this up in the right spot, the water gets so hot it's basically boiling. So he's gonna make everything flow straight from the spring. He uses his magic to scan every inch of the ground. He hooks up a super tough pipe to the water source and slaps a filter right on the end. Next, he sets up another slanted pipe to rush that water straight to the village while keeping it at the perfect temperature. All he's got left is to finish building the spring and the village, and then everything's finally gonna be okay. That's what R was picturing in his head, but all he actually made was a super weird pool. Letting those clueless farmers handle it was a total disaster.
Now we just gotta build a place to stay right next to that pool.
They can't mess with the temperature, but the water is rushing in exactly how they need it. To keep things clean, they hooked up a pipe between the pool and the pit, swapping out the hot water for a bunch of gross, dirty water. Arsa's brother asks him if just boiling a bucket of water would have been way faster for his bath. He's totally lost on why it's such a massive struggle just to get hot water into the city. R says these hot springs give you a massive energy boost that regular water just can't touch. The kid asks if meditation doesn't already fix the problem, and our guy is super annoyed because the little dude is actually making sense. Now he just looks like some weirdo making everyone work like crazy just because he wants to take a bath. But honestly, he just wants his brother to think he's a total legend. He tries to get some sleep, but he just can't stop overthinking, and even that hot bath didn't help him relax at all. He just wanted his little brother to think he was a total legend. Ours builds a massive space that's seriously huge. Vargas asks if that thing is just made of glass and bricks, and he's wondering what our guy is even planning to do. He drops this totally epic plan and claims he's been working on it for ages, even though he literally just thought of it last night. He built a greenhouse because he wanted to find a way to keep his plants growing even in the middle of winter. He even tried making a smaller version before, but it totally flopped. That glass is basically doing zero to stop the freezing cold. The sun made the days easy, but at night it was just as freezing inside as it was outside, until everything finally changed. Ars is going to use water to keep the inside of the greenhouse nice and toasty. Vargas is totally blown away, and Ars tells him to spread the word that the villagers can finally start farming there. If this actually works, we won't have to worry about food all winter long. And that's how they ended up building a hot spring and a greenhouse in Linda Village, two things that were totally new to everyone in that world. Ars thanks Valkyrie, telling her that because of her help, they can finally get way more done during the winter. He's absolutely hyped that she finally popped out of the egg he hatched. His Valkyrie is seriously on a whole other level. These beasts can sprint even with grown men on their backs, and they've totally mastered his magic with way more mana than any regular farmer. Now they've even found a hot spring, and it turns out these Valkyries are basically built different since they don't even care about extreme heat or cold. Valkyries can chill in boiling hot springs or sprint through a freezing blizzard like it's nothing, basically making them wild animals that can survive anywhere. R pulls the Valkyrie into a big hug, and the merchant is totally confused about what the kid is even doing.
They're just about ready to hit the road.
Ours realizes this is a massive chance because everyone is usually stuck in place during the winter. The #1 rule of business is doing the stuff that nobody else is doing, so they grabbed every single thing they managed to grow in the greenhouse.
They're hauling it straight to the city of Fontana to sell it off.
Those things usually taste like garbage and nobody buys them, but now everything is totally different. Everyone's going wild trying to grab every single thing they can get their hands on. Finding fresh veggies in the middle of winter is basically impossible. Winter here is a total nightmare, and when food runs out, people start making some pretty dark choices just to have fewer mouths to feed. Most oldest sons just get kicked out to die in the gutter, because unless you're rich, the cold and hunger will definitely get you. Even though they're completely sold out, the crowd just won't stop begging for more. To keep the crowd from freaking out, they promise they'll be back the very next day. Everyone's dying to know if he's still got that fresh food on him. Ars tells them to chill because Baruka is loaded with food, especially since Hotsuka sells like crazy during the winter. He's totally hyped because he feels just like Santa Claus leading his pack of reindeer. He figured out how to rake in way more cash with Hotsuka than he ever dreamed of. Welcome to Fontana, the city that basically belongs to Carlos Fontana.
This is officially our first big mission as the Lord of Barricania.
They were just following the local New Year's traditions of that land. Every knight has to check in with the Lord who hired them at the start of the year, so our guy headed straight to Fontana Castle. Inside the Lord's hall, every single person dropped to their knees before him. Ars is just a rookie, so he got stuck waiting and ended up being the very last person to see Carlos Fontana. Then the party kicks off with a massive feast. Everyone was whispering, trying to figure out how Raymond actually lost to a literal kid. They're totally fuming that our guy is winning on their turf and can't believe the Lord even let this kid have a spot. Being a knight shouldn't be about who your parents are, but the truth is, almost all of them are just born into knightly families. Everyone at that party is a rich elite or a total snob, definitely not your average farmer. R was just standing there, totally on his own. Carlos Fontana picked him personally, but even then, nobody wants to have his back. Everyone is totally losing it, claiming we only set up camp so fast because some rich nobles are secretly helping us. He says some wild stuff, but nobody has the guts to call him out because his track record is just too legendary. The kid starts getting bored, so he pumps mana into his eyes to see everyone's glowing auras. That makes it super easy to spot the difference. He notices that the guys who've actually fought have way better mana quality, even if they don't have a ton of it. They're probably sharpening their mana right in the middle of the fight, but check this out. Raymond's old partners were total scrubs with tiny amounts of trash mana. R figures it's a smart move to have Beto add managed training to the menu. But then something totally catches their eye. He's left scratching his head, wondering who this girl could actually be. She looks like she's never fought a day in her life, but her mana is way more powerful than anyone he's ever met. Most knights wrap their whole bodies in mana, but her power is way different. Ars walks up to her and asks if she's got a second to talk. She spins around and asks what she's even supposed to do for him. Every single bit of her mana is surging straight to her head, and our guy has no clue if she's doing that on purpose or if she doesn't even realize it. The guy starts freaking out and demands to know her name and where she lives. He says he wants to know every little detail about her, but she tells him she needs some breathing room. Ars tries to explain he's not a bad guy, and that he's just really curious about her.
Wait, someone's heading straight for them.
Carlos tells Ars it must be pretty sweet to be totally free to hit on girls right as the new year starts. The guy jokes that he's busy chasing girls before even meeting him, but hey, they say legends always have a massive appetite for that stuff. Ars tells her he didn't pick her just because she's a girl, but because she's actually super interesting, while Carlos notices the kid is totally thinking about Lilina. He tells the girl to show Ars to a room and hang out with him, but she immediately starts talking back. But he claims she literally spends every single day just buried in her books. This is the perfect chance to entertain his guest, and Ars is super hyped to finally talk to her. But man, he really put her in a super tough spot. Once the group meets up, our guy asks Lilina how she even knows Carlos Fontana. He says he's only asking because he can tell the guy is super worried about her. She drops the bomb that they're blood-related, and he's totally losing it because they're actually siblings. He says they acted like total strangers at the party, but then Lilina reveals that Carlos is actually the son of the Lord's wife. But get this, she was actually the daughter of one of the maids.
That means these two are actually half-siblings.
R notices they have the exact same hair, but she doesn't have Carlos's wild drive. She's actually super quiet and keeps to herself. He's also totally blown away by how cool Carlos Fontana looks.
But seriously, Lilina is just straight up stunning.
Ars stops and asks why the Lord's sister is carrying trays like a servant. But she tells him it's actually a noble woman's job to serve the guests. Most kids learn manners by carrying trays, but she spent her whole life shut away just reading books. Carlos Fontana finally snapped and forced her to entertain the New Year's guests, which was totally wrong since she was only 16 and couldn't do a thing about it. Lilina looks down and asks what he's dying to find out. The guy explains he was checking out everyone's Mona at the party, but noticed hers is all bunched up in her head, leaving her totally confused. Ars asks who taught her that trick, but she says nobody and had no idea that mana could even change depending on where it is in your body. R figures out that focusing all his mana into one spot makes that body part way more powerful. Beto coats his entire body in mana to power up his strength, while Vargas focuses everything on his skin to build an insane defense. Pumping mana straight into your head makes you think way faster and helps you remember every little detail. Saving your memories works the exact same way. It turns out Lilina is doing all of this without even realizing it. She realizes her mana is on a totally different level compared to everyone else there. He wonders if she's just a natural or if it's because she reads so much, making him super curious about what kind of books she's actually into. She explains that these books are massive and way more complicated than normal stories, so it takes a ton of time just to finish a single one. If scrolls are already this expensive, books are definitely going to be way worse. Honestly, when he thinks about it, those letters for noble titles are just packed with useless filler and way too many words. He can read a bit, but if you handed him a classic book without a dictionary, he'd be totally clueless. The boy asks Lilina to break down the book's story using super simple words. She points out the history book since he's totally clueless about the past of this world. He's basically wondering how the royal family went from ruling every single noble to totally falling apart.